Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if powerful Naruto harem Sasuke and Sakura bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by REAPER7 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Two shadows ran through the streets of Konohagakure, stopping only long enough to go through some of the trash they were looking through for some scrolls and maybe some food. One was about a foot tall, with the vague shape of a baby fox with amber-colored slitted eyes. The other was a boy around 12, with dark spiky hair and blue ocean eyes that stuck out from the shadows. In fact, they both almost looked like shadows themselves, since it was a minor jutsu made by the boy himself. The little fox was making growling noises to the boy. "We must hurry. It is almost dawn, and the villagers will not want to see you this early, master." They could speak to each other using the canine language the Inuzuka knew well, so they had no problem with most of the dogs in the streets. As long as one pack didn't interfere with another, there would be no conflicts. In fact, he got along with most of the Inuzuka dogs, despite his scent of a fox. They once growled something about alpha. But he didn't understand just yet. The boy also made a growling sound, saying, "Don't worry too much, Akio. The villagers are quite lazy on Mondays, so we don't have to worry about them for a few more minutes, perhaps another half hour. But maybe we should return for a short nap." The little fox, Akio, yipped at its master, yawning as well from all the running the two of them had to do all night. They ran towards their apartment, ducking out of the way whenever a villager would pass by. Once in their apartment, they checked to make sure there wasn't any trap set up by the villagers before letting their shadow jutsu drop, showing Naruto Uzumaki, the loud and obnoxious knucklehead of Konoha. He placed all the scrolls he found that night in a storage scroll. "You know, Naruto-sama," said Akio, "I sometimes wonder why you chose to be a loud and ridiculous fool as a disguise around the villagers. I understand that they would destroy you if you were to show your true strength, but why not be something a little more normal?" Naruto smiled and said, "Well, Akio, if you think about it, if I ever showed what my true strength was, the villagers would be after me with torches and pikes. I'm not sure why they hate me, but there are those that still care about me, and that's why I'll become more and more stronger. So it's better to stay hidden until I graduate this year, so once I become a shinobi, the villagers can no longer treat me as they wish. If they tried to harm me, they would be violating a fellow shinobi of the leaf, making their attacks a bit difficult to get away from. Not only that, if I act stupid I'll be ignored a bit more." Akio gave a small yip to show it understood. Naruto-sama was the kindest person it had ever met, and if it weren't for him, the little fox would be part of a queen's coat or something for its rare black fur. She may not have been any ordinary fox, but she could still die like any other one if done right. All the humans had to do was pierce the heart and the fox would die instantly. If they hit any other part, it wouldn't matter, since its body was almost made of the same substance a shadow clone was made of. It could blend with the shadows and expand its body into any shape and size. All it had to do was collect the shadows around it and it could turn into anything. It would heal quickly, but it was a bit painful. "Well, off to bed now, Akio," Naruto said and leaned down to pick up the little fox, holding it like a baby. Akio yawned, showing its small but sharp teeth in its mouth. They both cuddled into the bed and closed their eyes, ready to sleep for a few hours before finally going to the academy. In the morning, the alarm sounded and Naruto fluttered his eyes open while turning the alarm off and saw he still had Akio in his arms. As the little thing started to wake up and stretch, it then brought up its left leg to scratch its left ear before looking up at Naruto and yipping. Naruto smiled at his little companion and patted it on the head. In a second, Akio turned around and walked straight towards the shadow of the couch in the direction of the door to be able to see anyone who tried to break into its master's apartment. Naruto smiled and tossed a doggy treat into the shadows as Akio started munching on it while Naruto put on his orange clothes that he usually wore for the mask he wore as the knucklehead of Konoha. "At ready world, here I come," shouted Naruto, while inside he was saying, "Soon, I can stop acting like an idiot and be myself." He smirked and started roof jumping to the academy to get a good head start on things. He couldn't make a regular clone, but he thought if he made more than just one, he couldn't kill them from pushing too much chakra into simply one. He went to the class and saw he was on time for once. He didn't care and took his seat right next to the screaming pink-haired banshee. He hated it a lot, but as the mask he wore, he had no choice but to oblige to his destiny. He turned to look at Sakura, the biggest screamer in the world. "Hi, Sakura-chan. You want to go on a date with me after school?" he asked, forcing his happy smile mask, while inside he was thinking, maybe I should drop the mask now. Maybe she won't punch me anymore and then I'll just leave her alone. That'll be a nice solution. Sakura did the very thing he expected her to do. She turned to him and said, "Leave me alone, Naruto Baka. I'm trying to get Sasuke-kun's attention. See if I give a crap." Naruto wanted to scream but held his smiley mask in place. Pretty please, Sakura-chan. You keep wasting your time with him all the time and he'll keep ignoring you, so you might as well be with me, right? This only got him a big bump on his head from being hit by the pink banshee. He wasn't that hurt since he already had been tortured hundreds of times by the villagers, but he wasn't about to let Pinky know that, so he pretended to be knocked out cold, which was easy since all he had to do was keep his eyes closed and look asleep. He came to after counting to 200, then just sat there, trying to get a date with the banshee. He noticed the sad and shy look of Hyuga Hinata. She had a cute habit of stuttering and poking her index fingers against each other, which made her stand out more than anyone else, since she was the heir of the ever-powerful Hyuga clan. Next to her was the walking hormone, Inyazuka Kiba. On his chest, inside his coat, lay Akamaru, his companion. He was still trying to get a date with her, but she refused in the most polite way possible. This of course, wasn't left unnoticed by Naruto, who gritted his teeth in annoyance. You just don't learn, do you mutt-face? I'll place you in your spot soon enough. He tried to ignore him, and thanks to Iruka and Mizuki coming into class, everyone was forced to sit down. Alright then, we're going to start the exams now. I'll call your names alphabetical order and you will each perform a clone. As Iruka started calling out names, Naruto felt someone looking at him. He looked next to Iruka to see Mizuki-sensei looking at him with a glint of hatred in his eyes. Those eyes always made Naruto uncomfortable, so he laid his head down until the team finally returned to his seat with the cheerleading fangirls and began to brood. Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka called out. Naruto got up while listening to many say he wouldn't graduate. He just shrugged it off and made the right hand sign before in a cloud of smoke, 3 Naruto clones appeared. The problem was they almost looked sick and pale and were barely even standing. Naruto frowned when he felt that there was someone screwing with his chakra manipulation. He looked over to Mizuki, who looked like he was trying to suppress a smirk. Naruto wanted to say something, but Iruka said, I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but you can't pass since you couldn't perform the jutsu right. He looked like he was in pain and Naruto forced himself to cry as well. He knew that would be what Mizuki wanted, so he ran out of the academy. When everyone else passed and started being picked up by their parents, Naruto was crying, but only through the mask. In the inside, he was making plans on making Mizuki team pay dearly. He wasn't going to show any mercy to the gray-haired bastard. He was about to leave when he felt someone grab his shoulder. He knew the chakra signature of the person and wanted to punch him, but knew Mizuki wouldn't just come up to him to be nice. He turned around slowly and looked up at the smiling face of Mizuki, who mostly seemed to be forcing the smile. Come with me, Naruto-kun. I have a secret to tell you. He said, not dropping his smile that somehow turned into a smirk. Naruto thought, what does he want? He followed Mizuki until they were at the Hokage monument on the current Hokage's head. They sat down facing all of Konoha. You know, Naruto, started Mizuki, you shouldn't blame Iruka-san for not letting you pass. The guy cares a lot about you, so go easy on him. He turned to see Naruto nod. He turned back to the village and said, what if I told you there was a different way to become a genin? It's quite simple, really. All you have to do is steal a certain scroll. The stealing part is to test your stealth. That way we'll see if you can sneak past enemies in the battlefield. Then you have to learn one of the jutsu the scroll has, and you're all set. He gave Naruto a smile and stood up. That's the only way I can think of to be able to help you, so sorry there wasn't much of a choice. Naruto knew that Mizuki was tricking him, but he thought that if he read a few jutsu and copied them in his own scroll, he could learn about them later on. Okay, Mizuki-sensei, I won't let you down. Naruto stood up and headed home to get ready for his next test. Mizuki watched as the blonde disappeared from sight before laughing evilly. Soon, I'll kill the stupid Kyuubi brat and be rewarded by Orochimaru-sama. He'll be pleased when he learns the damn demon is dead. Mizuki turned around and walked back to his own apartment to get ready. In the night, Naruto couldn't believe how easy this was. He had a black ninja too strapped to his back, which seemed out of place with all the orange. Sure, the place was guarded, but it was very easy to get past the guards. Once outside, a few yards from the tower, he looked into the scroll and saw it had hundreds of jutsu that he never heard of, and a few he did know. He read the first one and saw it was Shadow Clone Jutsu. After some reading on how it gives the user the strength in numbers, he learned that whatever his clones learned would be transferred to him when they dispersed. Seeing as Mizuki team wouldn't be here for a while, he decided to start training. He looked around and saw nobody around before calling out, you can come out now, Akio. The ninja too on his back shifted into the form of a baby fox with black fur before leaping to the ground. This should be fun, Naruto-sama. Meanwhile, Sarutobi frowned at what the boy was doing. Normally he would feel proud on him being able to steal the scroll without anyone knowing, but right now he was worried on what Naruto would do with the Forbidden Scroll's jutsu. He didn't even notice that there was a black fox next to Naruto, since it was the middle of the night. "Naruto-kun, what in the world are you doing?" he asked himself. He decided to alert Iruka first before telling anyone else. Few hours later. Naruto stood up from the ground, panting and sweating from the training. He had to admit, making shadow clones was tough, but he finally made it. He went over to the scroll, which was being guarded by Akio. The little fox had a scroll spread before it with a paintbrush in its mouth, a black ink canister next to the scroll. It was copying the jutsu, which surprised Naruto the first time he learned Akio could write fast with just its mouth. When Akio saw its master coming, it trotted over to him and canine spoke, "How did it go, Naruto-sama?" Naruto smiled and said, "It went fine, though I hope I'm not too weak to fight Mizuki team, should he show up." "How much did you copy?" "About half of it, and there are a few things that don't make sense to me, but I wrote it down just in case." Naruto smiled at the little fox and brought out a dog treat. "Good job, Akio." He tossed the pup the treat, which it caught happily, before turning to the scroll and rolling it up. He suddenly felt a chakra signature and said, "Akio, turn into something nobody will notice, quick." Akio, finishing her treat, turned into a snake and wrapped around Naruto's waist before turning into a black leather belt with a metal fox head on the buckle, its eyes glowing amber faintly. Naruto nodded and growled out, "Nice, Akio. You look good." "Thank you, Naruto-sama." Just then, Iruka came into the clearing, while Naruto quickly put a smile on. "Naruto. What are you doing with the forbidden scroll? Do you have any idea what you have done?" "Of course I know," said Naruto with a smile, "I passed. I'm a genin now." Naruto pretended to look around confused. "But where's Mizuki-sensei? He said if I learned one jutsu from the scroll, I could become genin. Did he send you instead?" It was the easiest way to warn Iruka while not telling him directly of Mizuki being a traitor. Iruka looked confused for a moment before he realized what Naruto was saying. That's when Mizuki finally came along and started talking and trying to make Naruto give him the scroll. Naruto was about to give it to Iruka when Mizuki said, "Don't you want to know why you're hated by the whole village?" At this, Naruto froze and stared at Mizuki. He really knows why. Iruka shouted, "No Mizuki, that's an S-class secret, he's not supposed to know." Mizuki threw one of the Fuma shuriken strapped to his back and threw it at Iruka, who jumped out of the way. The shuriken impaled itself on a tree that was behind Iruka a second ago. "It's because you're a demon," shouted Mizuki, "you're the reincarnation of the Kyuubi, the demon that attacked the village 13 years ago. The fourth didn't really kill the demon, he sealed it inside a newborn baby. You're that baby." He grabbed the other Fuma shuriken and started spinning it. "Now," he said, rearing his arm back to throw the giant weapon, "you die." He tossed the giant star at Naruto, who still didn't have time to digest the information he was just given. Iruka saw this and jumped in front of Naruto, taking the hit as the shuriken hit his back, knocking Iruka over Naruto. "Naruto," Iruka said in a low whisper, "don't listen to him, you're not a monster, you're a real child, and you're a lot like me when you want attention. Take the scroll to safety, away for Mizuki go." Naruto could do nothing more than obey and scrambled out of there with the scroll on his back. Mizuki took the first shuriken he tossed before turning to chase after Naruto. Iruka got back on his feet with a little effort before taking the giant shuriken out of his back and chasing Mizuki. Naruto had tears in his eyes, blurring his vision. "That's why they hate me. They think I'm the Kyuubi no Yauko. But Iruka-sensei said I'm not. What am I?" He didn't realize Akio returned to its fox form and ran beside him. The little fox was silent but thought, Naruto-sama is the container of Kyuubi-sama. It explains why he has a fox-like scent, but he's nothing like Kyuubi-sama. Kyuubi-sama was a strong demon, but she wasn't evil. Why would she attack the village Naruto-sama protects? Something isn't right. Naruto saw someone catching up to him from behind and dove into a nearby bush, Akio close behind him. Naruto saw that Iruka and Mizuki were suddenly battling. He saw Iruka was badly hurt and seemed tired as he sat against a tree's trunk. Mizuki growled out, "Why do you protect that demon filth? He'll eventually turn on the village and destroy it all. That's what monsters do." Iruka chuckled and said, "You're right, that is what monsters do." However, he started picking himself up from the dirt. Naruto isn't a monster. He's a boy with dreams that are close to his grasp. I know he can become Hokage, and he will eventually. Mizuki glared at him and said, "You're wasting your breath. Your last word should have been cursing the demon brat on wasting your life." He brought back his left arm, which was the arm holding the shuriken he still had, and aimed at Iruka's head. "Now die." As he was about to throw the shuriken when he felt a huge pain in his left hand, forcing him to drop the Fuma shuriken and look to where the pain was. "You!" he shouted. Naruto was right next to him, blue eyes blazing. He was holding an elegant katana that seemed to be made of shadows in his left hand. It had silver wind-like patterns all along the blade, along with an amber pommel that looked to be in the shape of a fox's fang. Don't you dare hurt Iruka-sensei. Naruto growled out, or I'll destroy you. He twisted the katana, making Mizuki scream in pain. Soon, black markings started spreading around Mizuki's body. When he felt it burn, he turned again to Naruto. What are you doing to me? He shouted. I'm placing you under one of my favorite jutsu. You won't be able to move for a long time, Mizuki team. Shadow style. Black imprisonment. Naruto said, his eyes still blazing, almost glowing. Iruka could only watch in amazement as Mizuki's skin was covered by the markings until his skin turned pitch black and his body slumped to the ground. Is he dead? Asked Iruka, who thought he looked rather dead. Naruto shook his head. No, just paralyzed. He can't move until I release the jutsu. Iruka nodded and wondered how a child around 12 could take down a chunin with a simple stab. He smiled and said, Naruto, get over here. Naruto went over to Iruka, Mizuki's body forgotten. Close your eyes. Iruka ordered. Naruto did, and after some movement, Naruto opened his eyes to see Iruka holding his goggles and no headband on his forehead. Naruto gave a big smile when he felt his forehead and said, thanks Iruka-sensei. Iruka smiled at his student, feeling proud of him. He was about to say something when the sword Naruto had melted into the shape of a baby fox with amber eyes. The fox turned to Naruto and gave a playful yip. Naruto smiled and bent down to scratch the back of Akio's ear, making the fox's tail wag. This is my partner, Akio. She's been with me for some time now. Naruto explained. Iruka gaped at the little fox. That fox how can it was just Iruka stuttered, not sure what to ask first. I'll explain it to you on the way back to the tower. Naruto said, Akio now on his head, riding the same way Akamaru did atop Kiba. Iruka simply nodded and followed the boy as he began explaining how he met Akio. Flashback. The 7-year-old blonde ran as fast as he could from a pack of drunk villagers. He had blue shorts, blue sandals and a white sweater. Since the villagers didn't care what happened to the kid, they could use him as a punching bag whenever they wanted. Naruto ran and ran, dodging anything thrown at him. Bottles, bricks, knives, etc. He turned to the left in the next corner and rushed behind an alleyway going to the back of a clothes shop. He ducked behind the trash cans and watched as the villagers ran past him. He sighed and was about to run somewhere safe when he heard a yelping sound like a dog being tortured. He looked inside the clothes shop through the open back door to see a man holding a baby fox by the tail. The little thing was barely half a foot and had black fur and amber-colored eyes that were slitted. The man was quite muscular with a bald head and a bushy mustache. He was wearing a brown leather apron and brown boots with jeans and a white shirt under the apron. I haven't seen anything like you, mused the man, maybe I can turn you into a nice car for some queen, little fella. The little fox, still yelping, looked in the direction of Naruto, who somehow found a voice that said, please. Help me. I'll do anything you want. I smell someone with a fox's scent out there. If you can hear me, I beg of you. Help me. Naruto, like anyone seeing a baby fox being tortured, ran and punched the man right in the kiwis. The man buckled over and tried to catch his breath while Naruto and the fox started running like crazy. The man though one thing, damn demon protecting his followers. Naruto ran and ran, the black fox running next to him. The streets weren't crowded, so Naruto didn't worry too much that the villagers would see him or not. When they finally reached his apartment, they entered quickly. The lady owning the place knew Naruto for who he was and not the demon filth others thought of him. But they still got in sometimes, breaking some of Naruto's stuff and furniture. He closed the door as fast as he could behind him quickly. He turned around to face the little fox, which was surprisingly bowing before him. It made growling sounds, which, surprisingly, Naruto understood as thank you for saving me. I am eternally in your debt. Naruto blinked then blinked again then he shouted, I can understand you. The little fox looked surprised as well. It barked or yipped, which somehow sounded like, you can. Naruto nodded his head and the fox looked amused. Interesting. I have heard of humans being able to speak to us, but never understand us. My name is Akio, a shadow fox demon. What is yours? Then Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. Responded the scared little blonde boy, still shaken by being able to understand the little thing. Then again, he has been hearing voices saying random things about bacon and meats when he was around dogs. Not only that, the dogs were the only things that respected Naruto for some reason. If you're a demon, why didn't you just kill that man-T that tried to hurt you? He asked. Because like humans, we demons are not simply born with powers. We have to study and train to become more and more stronger to be able to fight back. Us demons and you humans are not completely different, Naruto-sama. We demons can die as well, but we're harder to kill and we can stay alive for a much longer time than you can. Naruto nodded, still a bit confused, then asked, why are you calling me Naruto-sama? I'm still just a boy and I'm not Hokage yet. Hokage? Is that your goal, Naruto-sama? Naruto nodded his head and said, once I become Hokage, people will have no choice but to stop underestimating me and see me with respect. They'll stop hurting me and I'll be the strongest out of all the Hokages. Believe it. Although Naruto couldn't tell, Akio was smiling. I believe you, Naruto-sama. And flashback. It was times like this that Iruka wished he had helped Naruto more. Now he found out there was a demon helping Naruto out in his training and sneakiness. It might have explained how he could paint the Hokage monument in broad daylight with nobody noticing. If he can do that in broad daylight, who knows what he's capable of during the night. He could be the greatest spy using shadows. After explaining how he met Akio, they both realized they now stood before the Hokage office. When they entered, they were met by Old Man Sarutobi, Kahara and Homura. They didn't seem to notice the black belt he had on his waist. Explain yourself, boy. You have just stolen the forbidden scroll, so tell us what you were thinking besides being punished severely. Shouted Homura. Sarutobi raised his hand and smiled at Naruto. He fished a scroll out of his Hokage robes and tossed it towards the surprised blonde. Congratulations in completing your first S-rank mission, Naruto-kun. I'll see to it you get the payment for completing it and a bit of a bonus for acting as the fool to help us see Mizuki for the traitor he is. I have sent Anbu to pick up the body of Mizuki-san. You didn't kill him, did you? Naruto shook his head and smiled then said, he's paralyzed, Jiji, so you won't have to worry about a thing. Hiruzen nodded, while the other two old counselors could only gape at the boy. How can he complete an S-rank mission? He's not a ninja and shouldn't even be one ever. Demanded Kaharu. Sarutobi sent her a look before pointing with his pipe at Naruto's forehead. I see he has a Konoha headband, so I can only assume he is a ninja by the looks of it, am I right, Iruka-kun? Hi, Hokage-sama. Naruto-kun has passed a test much harder than that of the one taken by the other students and is now a genin of Konohagakure. Iruka stated proudly. He gave a smug grin to the two seething counselors. They were red with anger and all of it was directed towards Naruto, who seemed oblivious to the hatred shown by the two. While he was jumping up and down, he was thinking, take that, you fleshy old bags. Now then, I want you to go too and get those wounds healed, Iruka-kun. I don't want you to die now at such a young age. Sarutobi said with a smile. Iruka returned the smile and bowed before turning around and walking out of the office to begin his walk to the hospital. Then Hiruzen turned to Naruto and said, you're free to go now, Naruto-kun. Go and rest for tomorrow to meet your team and Jonin-sensei. Dismissed. Naruto nodded and ran out of the office, ignoring the glares the council elders sent him as he ran all the way home. Naruto woke up before his alarm went off and turned it off, excited about the teams that were about to be given out. He suddenly felt something heavy on top of him and saw that in his arms was a naked girl around his age with straight platinum blonde hair that reached down to her mid-back. She also had two fuzzy black fox ears on top of her head with a bump under the covers where her black tail was, tipped in white. She was a cute girl with pale skin, not too white, and a beautiful body with a perky chest and a nice round butt. The girl almost looked angelic in his arms, making him almost swoon. She was gripping Naruto's shirt, making Naruto blush a little before shaking the girl a little. Akio, wake up. He whispered. Unfortunately, she only crept closer to him until their faces were pressed against each other. Naruto blushed even more and tried to wriggle out of her grasp, but found her tightly holding him. He shook her a little harder until she finally started to stir. She slowly opened her amber-slitted eyes and realized she was nearly on top of him. Of course, she simply smiled with half-open eyelids and said, good morning Naruto-sama. She yawned, showing her pointy teeth. When she closed her mouth, it made a click sound and she slowly started to shrink until she was a baby fox. Sorry, Naruto-sama. But I wanted a bit more comfort while sleeping and changed to my human form. You are quite warm when sleeping. Replied the little kitsune. It's okay Akio. Just don't appear naked next time. I'm still too young for that. Naruto said, laughing sheepishly and standing up. Akio then turned back into her human form, again naked. She wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered into his ear seductively, but I'm not, Naruto-sama. You can do anything you want with your Akio-chan. Naruto's face blushed like crazy and he could barely move. Akio giggled and released him of her grasp before lying on the bed, covering herself and closing her eyes. Just kidding, Naruto-sama. You don't have to if you do not want to. When you are ready, you may do as you wish with any woman. She opened one eye and smiled. Including me. Naruto sighed. It wasn't the first time Akio tried to seduce him anyway. He was about to put on his orange jumpsuit before thinking, maybe it's time Konoha learned what the real Uzumaki Naruto can do. He dropped the jumpsuit and ran to his closet. It had one half filled with the orange jumpsuits and the other half had a bunch of normal-looking clothes. But at the bottom, right under the racks, was a small chest that he opened to find the clothes he always wanted to wear. He pulled on a skin-tight dark blue sleeveless shirt with thick orange lines going vertically down his sides, it showed his arms rather well. He next pulled on a pair of black shinobi pants with multiple pockets for kunais and scrolls. Next was the blue shinobi sandals, then a pair of black fingerless gloves with a metal rectangle on the back. Last, but not least, he brought out a long box and opened it. Inside was a beautiful katana with a dark blue handle and a black sheath. He pulled the sword out and admired its beauty. Its handle was a foot long, while the blade was 3 feet. The blade had the kanji for merciless on both sides. He strapped it to his back so the handle was over his right shoulder. Not bad, Naruto-sama. It fits you perfectly. Though, I don't understand why it is called merciless when you yourself are full of mercy, except to those who anger you," said Akio, still on his bed. "Thank you, Akio. I don't know why, but I found it in the forest of death beside a dead man and took it anyway. I no longer have to hide in the foolish mask I wore for many years now." Akio nodded, still not opening her eyes. "I am sure the village's female population will swoon at your looks since I am restraining myself from doing anything inappropriate." She giggled and turned a shade of red in her cheeks. Naruto sighed and was about to get out through his door when Akio said, "Wait for me." Naruto just smiled as she turned back into a fox and climbing up his body before landing on his head. He walked out of the apartment and locked the door behind him before roof jumping to the academy with Akio on his head. It was still very early in the day, so he wasn't surprised when he reached the academy to find he was the first one in his class. He walked up to a seat that was 1 seat away from the window and started meditating, Akio transforming into a belt and following her master's example. After a few hours, the second one in the class showed himself. Looking up to the door, he saw the arrogant and sad king of emos, Uchiha Sasuke. He took a seat near the window, to the left side of Naruto, and started his daily routine, which consisted of him brooding his ass off. Naruto just shook his head. That team's going to go to a pedophile that asks, "Hello little boy, want some power?" He really should get a life, even if he is the rookie of the year. He continued his meditating when he was interrupted by a chorus of loud squeals that were heard to his right. Naruto looked and saw the whole WLS, "We Love Sasuke-kun" fan club enter the doorway. That included the president and vice president of the club, Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino. "Great, the Banshee's here. Just what I needed." Naruto just sat there quietly. Then Sakura, the pink-haired Banshee, started screaming at him. "Naruto baka. Get out of my seat next to Sasuke-kun or I'll beat the crap out of you." As always, she forgot all about the situation and didn't even ask why he was there when only genin are supposed to be there. While most of the WLS club started fighting over whose seat it belonged to, about 10% of it swooned over how hot Naruto became, this included Ino. He could tell by all the blushes they were sporting. Some asked themselves why he was here, but they all decided to keep looking at him as new eye candy. After all, he showed more of his muscular body than the Uchiha prodigy did. "Haruno-san, please shut up. I can hear you perfectly, and I'm sure all you are doing is trying to not only turn me deaf, but your precious Sasuke-kun as well." Everyone stopped at the sudden change in Naruto. Sakura was taken off guard as well. Naruto always followed her around like a lost puppy, asking her on dates left and right. She was expecting him to call her the usual Sakura-chan, her surprise turned to anger in a second. "Naruto baka, this is your last chance before I make a crater on your face. Now, get off my seat." All Naruto did was cover his ears because of the volume coming out of her mouth. "You seriously need to shut up. I'm growing tired of your screaming habit." Sakura's mouth hung open for a while before she snarled and brought her left fist back while shouting, "Baka." She gave a swift left-handed strike meant for his face. It never touched him. He swiftly swatted it away like if it were an annoying bug. Which in a way, it was. Sakura brought her other fist back and gave an uppercut towards his stomach, only to have the belt on his waist spring out and turn into a fox and chomping on her fist. She screamed and Akio quickly let go of her to get away from the horrible noise. She landed on Naruto's head and started growling at Sakura. Naruto understood it as, "Get away, bitch, or I will bite your breast. Not that you have any, but it will still hurt like hell." He tried his best not to laugh at Sakura's bewildered look. Where did that fox come from?" She stuttered, still holding her fist. She didn't even ask why the fox's fur was black or how it was a belt a second ago. Same slow Banshee. "That's Akio, my partner. I wouldn't try to hit me some other time soon or she will kill you," Naruto said calmly. Sakura just stood there staring at him like he had a second head. "It's your partner?" she asked, still surprised. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Did you blow your own eardrums already?" "Yes, my partner." Akio jumped from Naruto's head and landed on the desk. Some girls thought the little thing was cute and the fact that Naruto thought of it as a she instead of an it like Sakura just did made Naruto seem more nicer. Naruto decided he had enough of people bothering him, so he disappeared in a puff of smoke and leaves and hightailed it out of there. He reappeared upside down the classroom ceiling, Akio returning to her belt form. He was about to go back to meditating when he saw someone who wasn't swooning over the Uchiha prodigy. It was Hinata. He smiled and thought, looks like Harem is doing fine. Perhaps I will need to help her in coming out of her shell of uncertainty. Ah, the Hyuga girl. She seems rather nice. I see why you speak highly of her, Naruto-sama. She is quite beautiful. Though, she seems uncertain of herself. Said Akio. True, but that's another reason why I tried my best to become Genin. I want to make sure she becomes as strong as she can be without the Hyuga clan looking down on her. Naruto said. I see. How would you help her exactly? Silence. Naruto-sama. Hiba is here, he might hear us. Oh. Naruto looked back to Hinata to see the stupid mutt once again start hitting on her. Common, Hinata. Just on one date, I'll show you the way a real man is. Kiba said with a grin. I'm sorry, Kiba-san. But I believe will pass. The shy Hyuga heir stuttered. Naruto Baka will never notice you. If you're with me, I'll make you the happiest woman in all of Konoha. And no, thanks, Kiba-san. She was blushing a lot now, and Naruto had to restrain himself from cutting the Inuzuka's head off with merciless. Must not kill, must not kill, must not kill. That idiot won't pay attention to you. How will he please you anyway? Don't kill, don't kill, don't kill. Amen, or else you'll end up a virgin the rest of your life. Kiba leaned in to kiss her. She struggled for a moment, trying to push the Inuzuka away, but Kiba was getting closer and closer. Gonna kill him, gonna kill him, gonna kill him. Hinata was close to tears now. She always wanted Naruto to be her first kiss, but she was losing, and she didn't want to hurt Kiba. What do I do? She asked herself. She closed her eyes, hoping with all her might that this was a dream. Akamaru suddenly started to whimper, trying to tell Kiba the alpha was becoming angry with him. When Kiba ignored him, Akamaru crawled into Hinata's lap and said something like, "Forgive me, alpha," before curling up into a ball. Finally, Kiba felt something touch his lips, while Hinata felt something on her lips as well. They realized whatever it was very cold. The two of them opened their eyes to find a katana right between them. They followed the blade to its source to find Naruto-kun. Hinata said happily, while blushing at her crush's new attire. Naruto was now standing on the desk, merciless on his right hand, still between the two. Naruto smiled down at Hinata and said, "Good morning, Hinata-chan." His eyes stayed warm like an ocean for a while, making Hinata almost faint over the attention she was getting, before turning to icy orbs glaring at Kiba. "You. If Hinata-chan doesn't wish for your advances, you mustn't pester her and find someone that will. Though I doubt anyone ever will with your attitude." Kiba glared at Naruto and shouted, "Baka. I almost had Hinata give me a kiss, but you ruined it. What the hell are you doing here anyway? You're not a genin, so get lost, dope." The ruckus was bringing a few eyes in their direction now. Some girls blushed on seeing the orange-loving boy again. "Listen well, mutt." Naruto said in a low growl, "You were going to kiss her. She didn't want you to kiss her, so you technically can't say she was about to kiss you. And one other thing, look at the forehead, Gaki. I became a genin passing a different test from everyone else here." Kiba just glared at him before climbing the desk and getting in a fighting stance. "Oh yeah? Kamen Akamaru, let's show this idiot who's the alpha around here." When he didn't hear a reply, Kiba turned and was surprised Akamaru was in Hinata's arms while sending apologies to Naruto. I'm sorry, Naruto-san." But Kiba would not listen. Please don't hurt him too much, I beg of you," whimpered the small white pup. Naruto smiled while sheathing his blade and said, "Don't worry, Akamaru-san. Your pet will not be hurt too much, just enough for him to understand what the consequences will be when he tries something like this again." He glared at Kiba and growled out, "Get ready for a world of pain, Kiba Baka." Kiba was surprised Naruto actually understood and spoke the canine language. Only the Inuzuka should, since they specialized in working along with dogs. He quickly shook his head and said, "So what if you can understand the canine language? I can take you down without Akamaru. And I'm not his pet." He charged at Naruto with great speed and sent an uppercut to his face. Naruto sidestepped it and simply pushed Kiba by the head, making the Inuzuka lose his balance and fall to the desk's below them. He hit his head hard and was knocked out immediately. Naruto picked up Kiba by his jacket's collar and laid him on the chair next to Sakura, who was next to Sasuke and seemed okay with having the seat occupied as long as it didn't interfere with her Sasuke pursuing. Naruto returned to the seat where Kiba once sat, right next to Hinata. "He didn't hurt you, did he, Harem?" he asked, concern in both his eyes and voice. Hinata realized Naruto's voice also became a little deeper, making him even more attractive. Her face red, she shook her head. "And no, and Naruto-kun. He didn't." Naruto nodded and said, good. I don't want to have to do anything severe just to keep him away from you. Don't ever hesitate to come to me for any help I can give you. He smiled and rubbed her cheek with his hand, making her let out a small eep. Sound from being touched by her crush. That did it. Hinata fainted right on the spot. Geez Naruto. Why do you always make her faint? So troublesome. Mumbled Shikamaru Nara, the laziest genin in the whole class. He was smart but didn't have much motivation. Next to him was Choji Akamichi, his best friend, munching on a bag of chips. Naruto turned to Shikamaru and said, I don't know what you're talking about, Shikamaru. I just want her to know I'll always be there for her should she need me. What a drag. Was Shikamaru's response. Naruto smiled and shook his head. Akamaru, still on Hinata's lap, asked, where is Akio-san? Naruto said, you can come out now, Akio. They heard a yip from Naruto's belt and the belt melted into the shape of a little fox. Good morning Akamaru-san. I see Kiba still has some discipline to undergo for his behavior. Yes, I suppose so. The little dog turned to Naruto. Forgive him, Naruto-san. He believes every second of the day is mating season. Naruto laughed and said, don't worry Akamaru-san. I accept your apology, but it might help to keep him on a leash. Akamaru barked in agreement and went over to sit on top of Kiba's still unconscious head. Akio went to Naruto's head and started sleeping for a while. Iruka finally entered the room and started giving out the teams. Same as canon. Naruto was a bit displeased on being put with the emo and the pink-haired banshee, but he didn't care. They didn't know how strong he really was. Iruka dismissed the class so they could go to lunch and disappeared. Outside, Naruto was sitting below a tree, his eyes closed as he meditated, Akio still on his head sleeping. Some girls would pass by and point at him while whispering, blushes on their faces as they continued walking. He didn't pay attention and simply kept meditating for a few more minutes. Just then, Sakura came over, hands on her hips, and said, you know Naruto, you don't have to act all cool like this. Even though you got a new look, you're still no match to Sasuke-kun. Now stop this cool nonsense and be yourself, and maybe I'll give you one of those dates you're always asking for. Naruto opened one eye and calmly said, I think I'll stay like this and pass the date. I hate to say it, but you were nothing more than part of the mask I made to hide my strength. So basically, I feel nothing for you. You're pretty, but I have my eye on another girl. She's much nicer than you, so you can stay with your Sasuke team. Not to mention that she's a hell of a lot more beautiful than you are. Sakura's mouth hung open. Naruto never liked her. She didn't know if she should feel angry, relieved, or sad. Angry because he only used her to hide his strength, relieved because it meant he would no longer pursue her, and sad because it meant he never liked her in the first place, though she didn't know why she cared. It was all an act. She wanted to say something, but the bell rang, signaling everyone had to return to the academy. Naruto walked away, hands in his pockets. After Iruka wished them good luck on the ninja world, he told them to wait for their Jonin sensei. After he disappeared, the Jonin came in one by one and took their teams for some get-to-know-each-other time. When only Team 7 was left, Sasuke and Sakura saw Naruto stand up and walk up to the door before turning to them and saying, I'll see you guys on the roof. And he disappeared. They just thought he was crazy and stayed put. After 3 more hours, a gray-haired man with the lower half of his face and left eye covered poked his head inside and said, my first impression is that you two are slow, seeing as your third teammate is already on the roof. Before disappearing in a puff of smoke, leaving 2 wide-eyed genin. On the roof. Naruto and Kakashi were having a little chat. Akio was still on Naruto's head, listening in on her master's conversation, while Kakashi was leaning on the rail across from a sitting Naruto. So Sasuke is an arrogant prick, and the Haruno girl is simply here because she wants the Uchiha prodigy to notice her, huh? Asked Kakashi, earning a nod from Naruto and a yip from Akio. It's no surprise Sasuke is a prick, since most of the Uchiha believe everything should be handed to them without them doing any work. The only one that didn't seem to be a prick at all was Itachi and my comrade, Obito. I just wish they were here. Naruto nodded and asked, when he was in Anbu, he was the one with the weasel mask, right? Earning a nod, he was a nice guy. It's hard to believe he would slaughter his whole clan just to test his limits. At this point, his eyes narrowed, why does something stink here? He was a great guy and he wasn't evil in any way. It doesn't seem right. You know, said Kakashi, you have a point. He was always a nice guy and wasn't proud in using his Sharingan all the time, only when necessary. His clan also became a bit shifty-eyed a few days before he killed them all. Maybe they were hiding something. When he was around, you would get less hurt by the mobs of villagers. Maybe I shouldn't have retired. I should have stayed to protect you. Sorry Naruto. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. Don't worry. What matters right now is that I'm alive and I now have you as a sensei. Kakashi's face saddened a little and he said, I hate to say this Naruto, but the council has ordered me to concentrate mainly on Sasuke. I might not show you and Sakura many things, so you're almost on your own. Kakashi expected Naruto to get angry and yell at him, and he would have accepted it gladly, but Naruto surprised him by saying, "It's okay. I know more than I let on. I'll see if I can teach Sakura a few things, but if she lets her fangirl attitude get in the way of making her stronger, I can't guarantee anything." Kakashi gave him an eye smile and said, "Thank you Naruto, I owe you one. I'll see how I can repay you." Naruto nodded and at that moment, Sakura and Sasuke came in, looking very pissed. They sat down and Kakashi said, "Okay then, now that we're all here, let's get to know each other. Tell me your name, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and your dreams for the future." Sakura raised her hand and said, Why don't you go first, so we have a better idea on what to do, sensei." Kakashi pointed at himself with a questioning look, as if asking if she was referring to him. When Sakura nodded, he shrugged and said, "Well, my name is Hada Kakashi. My likes are none of your concern." He patted his kunai holster where his book was and smiled before continuing, "As for my dislikes, I don't feel like telling you. I don't have many hobbies. My goal and my dreams for my future I've never given it much thought." Sakura and Sasuke sweat dropped thinking, he only told us his name. While Naruto shook his head and thought, mourning for the rest of your life over your lost comrades. What a future. Kakashi pointed at Sakura and said, "You're next, Pinky." Sakura glared at him and sighed while mumbling under her breath, then starting. "My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are," she glances at Sasuke and blushes, "my dislikes are," she glares at Naruto, which has Akio growling, "Bring it, bitch. My hobbies are," being with again, she looks at Sasuke with a giggle, "and my dream for the future is," she again looks at the breeding Uchiha while squealing. Naruto and Kakashi sighed, and Kakashi pointed at Naruto and said, "You're next, Blondie." Naruto nodded and started. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My likes are ramen, Akio, yip. And those precious to me. My dislikes are people who can't tell the difference between a sword and its sheath, traitors to their village, and pricks." At this point, Sasuke sneezes. "My hobbies are trying out new pranks to pull on the village and training. My dream is to become Hokage and make people respect me and see me for who I really am." Kakashi nodded. Naruto seemed like the normal one so far. "You're last, emo." Sasuke glared at him then closed his eyes and began. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like anything in particular and I dislike a lot of things. I don't have any hobbies either. My ambition is to kill a certain man." Naruto shook his head while crossing his arms and Kakashi sighed. This guy is going to be a pain, they could tell. "Okay then, meet me at training ground 7 at 6 o'clock for your real genin test." Naruto nodded and said, "I see. The first test was to see who had the potential to become genin, while this one is to see if you deserved it, right?" Kakashi nodded while giving him an eye smile. "Good guess Naruto. Guess you really were holding back all along." Sakura and Sasuke glared at Naruto, earning another growl from Akio. "Emo, Pinky. Try anything and both your heads are coming off in an instant." Naruto chuckled when he heard this from his partner. "Bring it, fools. I'll chomp on your nuts and breast until you beg for mercy." Naruto tried to hold his laughter in for as long as possible. Thankfully, Kakashi said, "One more thing, I wouldn't suggest you eating breakfast or you'll throw up." With that, he disappeared in a puff of leaves and smoke. Naruto got up while dusting himself and said, "Judging by his timing, I'm going to arrive at 10 with a good breakfast and then I'll see where I go from there. See you around guys." With that, he jumped over the railing and started down to the streets below on his way home, leaving two confused genin. One of Konoha's training grounds. Shino Aburam was throwing kunes at a pole to have better aim. He was about to throw another when he heard a voice say, "You got a minute?" "Yes," was his stoic reply. He turned around and found Naruto with his arms crossed. He sighed and said, "Listen Shino. Although I barely know you, I ask a favor from you. I don't trust your Inuzuka teammate for a second, so I would feel much more comfortable if you could keep Hinata-chan safe from him. Earlier today he tried to force himself onto her, but I interfered and took care of him. If you do this for me, I will be in your debt." Shino looked at the boy straight in the face, though it was hard to tell because of his shades. "Do not worry, Naruto-san. I shall see to it Kiba doesn't harm Hinata-san, mentally or physical." Naruto nodded and smiled. "Thanks Shino, I owe you." And Naruto disappeared via Shunshin. Somewhere in the forest of death. 2 o'clock in the morning. A shadow jumped down from a tree landing on a flat surfaced area. Another much smaller shadow landed next to the first before taking on the form of a young teenage girl. The shadow slowly started to gain color until it showed a girl with platinum blonde with a pair of dark blue jeans, a black leather jacket over a red shirt and blue sandals. The clothing she had hugged her body a lot, showing her luscious curves. Next to her was her teammate, Naruto, his eyes glowing for a second before returning to normal. They always trained in the forest of death for 2 reasons. 1. Nobody ever came in except during the Chunin exams, and 2. Because if they ever made any damage, others will simply think it was caused by a normal Chunin exam that happened. Back on the ground, Akio looked at Naruto and said, "Okay, I was looking around the library back at my homeworld last night and found this." She reached inside her jacket pocket and took out a red and black scroll. It's an old fighting style called Black Fist. It's mainly to bend around your opponent's attacks and counter with gravity, speed and strength, though it relies more on gravity. The stance is pretty easy as well, so we won't have any problem there. Let's get started, Naruto-sama. But that said, Naruto nodded and took the scroll while opening it. For the next few hours, they kept working on their new stance. Akio, also studying, brought out her own scroll to practice on jutsu her mother wanted her to learn and started reading it. Akio was also trying to increase her Yauki to stay a solid inanimate object for a greater period of time. She could still stay as a sword or belt, but only for a limited time, at most for half an hour. She barely had her first tail after the first 50 years of her life, and she was close to reaching her second. Even so, in her solid inanimate state, she could still be killed if hurt in the right place and if her Yauki supplies were too little. In her katana and ninjutsu state, her weakness would be the amber fang butt of the blade, or if in her belt form, it would be the buckle. Her weakness would mainly be anything with her amber-colored eyes on it. Sometimes the amber would become another shape or object, but it would always lead to her death if destroyed. Her Yauki would deplete the more time she stayed solid. If she were hit during a fight, it wouldn't matter so long as they don't hit her weakness. Soon enough, once she gained her fourth tail, she would stay immortal and wouldn't be able to die, even if they hit the amber for years to come. To put it simply, if there is anything of her inanimate form that is amber-colored, she would be wounded severely if it's hit. She might die, maybe she won't, but it all depends on how much Yauki she has left and the amount of shadows there are around her to recreate. If enough Yauki is left coursing within her, she could regenerate very slowly from the shadows around her. Naruto made a cross-hand sign, and 15 shadow clones appeared. He gave 2 of them instructions to work on using Merciless. He was okay with it, but he wished to be as strong as possible. Another 4 would work on his shuriken and kunai aim, and the rest would learn the new stance and moves of Black Fist. He looked at Akio and asked, "Do you think we should take a look at Kyuubi?" Akio didn't even hesitate. "Heck yeah. Let's go." Naruto sighed and sat down on the grass before beginning to meditate, Akio behind him with her back pressed up against his. In about 2 minutes, they heard a drip drip drip. Naruto snapped his eyes open and saw that he was in a sort of sewer. Naruto looked behind him to see Akio with her eyes still closed. He leaned next to her and said, "Come in, Akio, I think we're here." Akio's eyes were open and she was on her feet in a second. "Cool. Where's Kyuubi-sama? I wanna see." Okay. Naruto interrupted her. "Let's go look around." Training ground 7. 6 o'clock. A sleepy Sakura arrived just as Sasuke appeared as well. They looked at each other for half a second before Sasuke turned away from the pink-haired girl, who immediately started asking him for a date. They expected Kakashi to show up and get angry with Naruto that he wasn't here, but… Training ground 7. 10 o'clock. The 2 hungry and tired genin looked up to see Naruto walking up to them with Akio on his head, still sleeping from staying up all night. He had a hand on his stomach and he made a small burp before saying, "Excuse me." The other 2 just glared at him and just continued with whatever they were doing. Naruto walked over to a tree before sitting down at the base and opened a scroll, the same scroll that had the few jutsu Akio managed to copy down from the forbidden scroll. While he read, Sasuke came over with his usual pricky strides. "Fight me," he demanded. "No," Naruto said, not looking up from the scroll. "What, are you scared?" taunted the Uchiha. "No." "Then fight me." "No." "You're nothing but a coward, dope." "No, I'm not, now leave me alone." Naruto now had a tick mark on his head and he was ready to punch the Uchiha. Sasuke finally stopped bugging him and went to a tree to start brooding again. Naruto just sighed in relief and continued reading. He kept reading the scroll for about an hour, listening to the growls of his teammates' stomachs, until Kakashi finally arrived with a simple, "Yo." And what happened next was obviously inevitable. "You're late." From Sakura. Sasuke, being a prick as always, glared at the man and Naruto just stretched and said, "Good morning, Kakashi-sensei." Well, Akio woke up and yipped a hello to the white-haired scarecrow. Kakashi nodded at the blonde genin before saying, "Okay then, now that I'm here, let's begin your test." He took out 2 bells from his pocket and said, "It's quite simple. Just take these bells from me and you pass." Sakura, being the one to say the obvious, said, "Kakashi-sensei, there's 3 of us. Why do you only have 2 bells?" Unbeknownst to everyone else, Sasuke was thinking the exact same question. Yep, even the famous Uchiha was nothing but a stupid idiot who was pampered by the council elders. Naruto sighed and Akio growled, "What a bunch of stupid idiots." Kakashi restrained himself from slapping his head on Sakura, stating the obvious. Well, there's one for two of you, meaning one of you won't pass. Well, the other two pass, whoever doesn't will be sent back to the academy. If none of you get a bell, you all get sent back. Sakura had a look of disbelief, while Sasuke's face just stayed the same. Naruto's eyes narrowed for a second. I thought genin were assigned teams to work together. This will only make us compete against each other just to get a bell, he thought. Kakashi brought out a clock from Kami knows where, while placing it on a tree stump and setting it to 12 o'clock. He also took out 2 boxes from, again, Kami knows where, and left them on a stone. He then faced them all and said, you have until noon to get these bells. The only way to get them is through the intent to kill. Ready set go. With that, all 3 genin disappeared and hid where Kakashi couldn't find them. Well, Naruto was successful in doing so. Sasuke was barely visible, but did a fine job nonetheless. And Sakura wasn't having a good time with her bright hair when in a tree. Kakashi then reached into his kunai holster, the genin tensing and seeing him do this, and brought out a book. Kakashi started reading the little orange book and would sometimes giggle pervertedly, making Naruto have a good idea of what the book contained. He gritted his teeth knowing he had a perverted sensei for Kami knows how long. Well, at least I have a form of what his weakness is, he thought, though he decided Kakashi was simply way too weird to try to use that as a weakness. He then made a hand sign, and 3 Naruto clones appeared behind him. He nodded, and all 3 of them disappeared in blurs. All 3 clones surrounded Kakashi, who was impressed slightly. Already knows shadow clones. Not bad for sensei's son. I just wish I could teach him something and not get stuck with Sasuke. Why did Obito and Itachi have to leave me with this kid? Kakashi thought. He just barely blocked the kunai that would have cut off the strings on his bells. Lol. Whichever came first, it was pure instinct that he got a kunai out of his pouch as his kunai knocked the other out. He realized he was being attacked and took up a defensive stance. He looked around and only saw 3 clones. Only 3. I feel disrespected. Kakashi said with an eye smile. It quickly turned to one of alarmed as he was attacked at the same time by all 3 clones. They made a horizontal slash, making a triangle between them. If Kakashi hadn't jumped upwards, he would have been cut in half. However, the clones were expecting this, so they all jumped upwards, bringing their swords back. Again, in synchronization, they attacked at once, more metal clanging, as the blades hit a chunk of wood that appeared in a puff of smoke where Kakashi once stood. I know I said they needed to get the bells through the intent to kill, but this is just ridiculous. Kakashi thought, fearing for his life. He decided it would be a good idea to retaliate. He shined behind one of the Naruto clones and punched him on the back. It quickly puffed out of existence, the other 2 appearing from the smoke and letting out a barrage of stabs that almost got Kakashi. He was scared for his safety now, and he sure didn't want to use his Sharingan on a genin. This kid really did hold back in the academy. One of them kicked him on the stomach while the other punched his face, hitting his jaw hard. Now imagine his surprise when the 2 simply waved goodbye and disappeared with smiles. Kakashi just looked confused for a moment before looking down to make sure he wasn't injured. His eyes widened when he realized he only had one of the bells strapped to his belt. What the when did he get one? He looked around and tried to find Naruto's chakra signature. But he either ran too far away or he was really good at hiding his chakra signature. Elsewhere, Naruto was jiggling the bell in front of his face, admiring his clone's work. They may not have been as strong as him, but they did the job with numbers and smarts, all adding up to Kakashi fighting the equivalent of just one Naruto alone. And that's with no Akio. Naruto, under a pair of bushes, put the bell away in his pocket and started looking for the rest. He appeared behind Sakura and whispered, "Hey." Naturally, she jumped and was about to scream, but Naruto acted faster and covered her mouth before she could make any noise and held her close to his chest so she wouldn't struggle. "Shhhh. Sakura, it's me." He hissed out. Sakura finally realized it was Naruto and calmed down a little before realizing who was behind her. She grew angry and hissed, "What the hell are you doing here, Naruto baka? You nearly scared me to death." Naruto just sighed and started explaining on how one genin couldn't take on a jonin, but left out that he just did. His plan was simply to help Sasuke and Sakura to get a bell, then give his to one of them. Sakura, being Sasuke's true-as-ever cheerleader, said, "Sasuke-kun is stronger than a jonin. He can do it." Naruto shook his head and sighed. Akio rolled her eyes and tried to restrain herself from bitch-slapping Sakura for a dumb comment lie. Naruto looked to the side when he heard the sounds of a battle taking place. And Sakura, I think Sasuke could use a hand." He ushered to the pink-haired girl. Sakura simply nodded and followed Naruto into a clearing where they found Sasuke's head on the ground. Sasuke blinked twice and looked at them. Naruto knew it was one of Kakashi's techniques. Unfortunately, Sakura didn't. "Gyaya. Sasuke-kun's head. He's dead." she screamed. She then proceeded to fall to the ground after fainting. Naruto shook his head and sighed. This was going to be tougher than he thought. He and Akio started helping Sasuke out of the ground while talking. Listen Sasuke, one genin can't take down a jonin on their own. So what do you say I help you and Sakura get a bell so you can pass? Deal? What do you get out of this? You obviously want something. Demanded the Uchiha. Naruto shrugged and said, I'll think of something, but right now we need to get that bell. Sasuke nodded and Naruto walked over to Sakura. He picked her up by her shoulders, shook her gently and whispered, wake up Sakura. We need your help. The bubblegum-haired girl opened her eyes slowly and saw Sasuke standing behind Naruto. Am I dead? She asked sleepily. Naruto shook his head and said, no, Sasuke's alive as well. He just got caught in one of Kakashi-sensei's traps. Sakura felt a little relieved knowing Sasuke was okay. She nodded and realized Naruto was holding her. She blushed and unconsciously snuggled a little closer. She couldn't stop herself, Naruto was simply so warm and safe. But she was shoved straight into the cruelty of reality when Naruto let her go and pulled her to her feet. That's when they heard the sound of an alarm going off. Crap. Naruto mumbled. That's when Kakashi appeared, his arms crossed and his bored expression on. Well, it seems that you didn't pass. But I feel generous, mainly because the new Icha volume came out this morning, so I'll give you a second chance. But Sakura doesn't get any food because she didn't even try. Sasuke, Naruto, I trust you won't free her or feed her. He finished just as he was done tying up Sakura to a log. It seemed that Akio thought of this as a good time to take a nap in the shade of a tree, a few feet from Naruto. Naruto just took the food and stayed there, looking up at the sky. He now understood why Shikamaru spent hours looking up at the clouds, it truly was peaceful. Sakura, however, was starving. She didn't have any breakfast and would like something to eat at that time. Her stomach was growling and she knew Naruto heard it because he kept glancing in her direction. I hope I'm not bothering him. I don't want him unhappy and having a weak teammate like me. She suddenly felt something brushing her lips. She looked down and realized there was a piece of rice hovering close to her lips being held by chopsticks. She followed the sticks to a gloved hand, up a bare arm, a dark blue sleeveless shirt and whisker marks. And Naruto. She whispered, not being able to believe Naruto was actually doing this. He wasn't that hungry, so why have Sakura starving? She looked at him a bit confused. What are you doing, Naruto? Eat up. You won't be of much help if you have an empty stomach. What about what Kakashi-sensei said about not feeding me? She asked, not really wanting to get in trouble. Naruto shook his head and smiled warmly at her. She was pretty sure her heart just melted the instant she saw him smile. My team comes first, rules be damned. I'm not letting you starve just because a one-eyed scarecrow says so. Sakura giggled a little, but opened her mouth anyway. She felt very happy Naruto decided to not let her starve. She looked over at Sasuke, who just looked at her for a second before looking away and returning to eating. As she took her first bite, she thought, maybe I shouldn't be such a bitch to Naruto. Maybe he's better this way. As soon as she swallowed, they heard Kakashi's voice boom out, what are you doing? Sakura was trembling, Sasuke got into a defensive position, and Naruto didn't even react. He just stood up and looked at Kakashi as he appeared in front of them, the sky turning cloudy and thunder booming. He took out a kunai and gave them a glare. Any last words? Yeah. Screw your rules, Kakashi. Naruto said, I won't let Sakura starve when I can do something about it. I don't care what you say or what you do to me, my teammates come first. Naruto unsheathed Merciless and Akio crouched down next to him, both ready to attack. Akio almost seemed to become more larger in the shadows. In a swift spin of his sword, Naruto cut off the ropes holding Sakura. The girl wearily got up and took a defensive stance next to the blonde boy, a kunai in hand. Sasuke walked over to stand beside them and took out 3 kunai and 3 shuriken, all ready to be thrown. Then my final verdict as the cloud suddenly disappeared, the thunder stopped, and Kakashi was back to his usual happy self. You all pass. He said, giving them an eye smile. Sasuke and Sakura face planted, and Naruto cocked his head to the side. What do you mean? He asked. Kakashi walked over to the rock that he put the boxes of food on and looked at it. Naruto walked up to stand next to him and saw it had names of many shinobi. I didn't finish what I said earlier. True, those who abandon orders are trash, but those who abandon their teammates are worse than trash. That's something I want all 3 of you to remember. Kakashi then turned to them and said, okay now, come back here tomorrow for our first mission assignment. With that, he made a peace sign and disappeared in a shunshin. Shadow here, I'm in point A. Raven here, point B. Blossom here, I'm in point C. Nice code names, Naruto. Thank you. Eyes, don't get distracted. Kakashi. Hi. Naruto looked from the shadow his was in. We'll capture it in 3, 2, 1 now. Naruto burst from the shadows, Sasuke from the tree he was perched on, and Sakura came from the bushes. The next 3 minutes were filled with the screams of 3 genin and a fox, scratching noises, and a cat shrieking. "Is it Tora?" Kakashi asked, flipping a page in his little orange book. "Yeah," came Sasuke's voice, though he seemed to be panting. "Red ribbon on left ear, brown and white fur. This is Tora all right. Good job team," Kakashi said, putting his book away for reading later on. It had been like this for days. Team 7 would go to the tower and get a D-rank mission, almost half of them being to capture Tora. The little thing simply never stayed with the daimyo's wife. Naruto didn't blame the poor thing. Tora was once again suffocated by the daimyo's wife's bone-crushing hug when they were back in the mission room. Naruto had enough. For what felt like the 73rd times he and his team had captured that cat, and he didn't plan on doing it again. There they were, Tora being petted by Naruto and purring in his arms. The daimyo's wife got up and crushed the cat with one of her hugs. Sasuke smirked, thinking the cat got what it deserved. Sakura thought, poor kitty, Naruto cringed, and Akio was thanking Kami over and over again for being with Naruto. Naruto decided the little thing needed to be better treated. Lady Daimyo?" he said to catch the woman's attention. "I believe I should tell you something." So he spent about half an hour telling her that she was actually suffocating the cat with her love and taught her how to hold it right. As soon as she adjusted her hold on Tora, the cat soon started purring on no longer having to fight for air. The daimyo's wife thanked Naruto and paid the Hokage double of what she usually paid before exiting the room with a happy Tora. Once she left, Naruto turned to see that everyone was staring at him with wide eyes. What? As they walked through the streets of Konoha, Team 7 was on their way to get another mission after painting a man's fence. They've been doing D-ranked missions day after day, learning minor things like tree walking. When Kakashi felt a need to be nice, he would show Sakura and Naruto something Sasuke wasn't learning. The team became quite famous when it was found Naruto had gotten rid of the Tora problem, though the few that trained in tracking no longer had any cat to practice on. Some of the teams even came to him and thanked him for finishing the problem and having the guts to do what others couldn't, to correct the daimyo's wife on how to hold Tora. Naruto didn't really see the big deal. Sure, he knew the daimyo's wife could probably have him arrested for correcting her or something, but he only taught her how to hold the cat without killing it. That's it. As they walked to the tower to get a new mission, Naruto was thinking. Maybe now would be a good time to get that C rank, Naruto thought. He then looked at his team and said, well, looks like we start a whole new day in finishing even more D-ranked missions. Right guys? This might take days. But the more words he said, the more a different part of his teammates would flinch. Either their elbows, hands, eye, eyebrow, leg, fingers, anything would flinch, and Kakashi could tell Naruto was up to something. Akio was yipping away at anything that moved and soon started chasing a blue butterfly. Naruto smiled watching her play. Although she was around 50 years old, she still acted like a child when she wanted to. Except when she tried to seduce Naruto, which had decreased slightly. She either decided to give up or she found something to do that's better. Whichever it was, just thinking about it made a chill go up Naruto's spine. As they entered the office to get another mission, Kakashi made his usual greeting. Team 7 awaiting for the next mission, Hokage-sama. The Hokage looked up and smiled. Good morning, Team 7. Well, today there's painting a fence, walking some dogs, finding a lost rabbit, helping someone garden, helping someone move into a new house, getting some sue. No. Screeched Sakura, no. I've had enough of these D-ranked missions. We need something that's not even a mile close to being a simple chore. We're ninja. Give us something higher ranked. By the time she was done, her face was red and she took a deep breath from all the screaming she just did without stopping to take a breath. Iruka glared at her and said, Sakura. Show some respect to Hokage-sama. He knows when you're ready to take on different missions, so don't complain. Actually, said Sarutobi, they've been ready for about a week. Kakashi said they just needed to ask. The 3 genin turned to said Scarecrow, whose nose was still in his orange little book. He tried his best to get his head inside the book to hide from the glares from Sakura and Sasuke, Naruto's cocked eyebrow, and Akio's barks that sounded vaguely like laughter. He finally looked from his book and gave them an eye smile. What? You had to be sure that you believed that you were prepared or else it wouldn't have been good for any of you. Naruto shrugged while Sasuke and Sakura humphed while looking away from him. Sarutobi sighed and said, alright. I'll give you a C rank. After digging through a pile, your job is to escort a bridge builder to Wave and protect him from bandits until he's finished with the bridge. Iruka, will you please go get him? Iruka nodded and stood up to get the client, Tazuna. Now then, Sarutobi said, let me explain how the ranking works. And for the next few minutes, Hiruzen started telling them about the Genin, Chunin, Jonin and Cage missions being divided. When he was done and looked at the team before him, he almost lost it. So, what do you think, Naruto? asked Sakura, holding two vials with different nail polish in them. Which is better, the red or the green? Naruto thought, placing a hand on his chin and looking closely at the vials. Red, it seems to go good with your dress and it's not too bright. Ah, thank you. Sakura said happily. Sasuke was meanwhile pestering Kakashi to teach him something lethal, while Kakashi himself was trying to read his book while blocking out Sasuke's voice. Hey! Shouted the old Hokage, pay attention to me. All four members of Team 7 turned to him. Kakashi put a hand behind his neck and said, sorry Hokage-sama. Did you say something? Hiruzen's head slammed into the desk, almost ready to go all cage on the team's ass, when the door opened to show Iruka with an old man around 40 drinking some sake. The old man looked at Team 7 and said, this is what I get. A bunch of kids, a black fox and a one-eyed freak. The blonde one looks okay, but the pink-haired one looks like a freak that belongs to a circus. Naruto and Kakashi had to hold back Sakura as she tried to kill the man. Sakura. Naruto said. I'm pretty sure we're supposed to protect him, not kill him. Sakura calmed a little, but still glared at the man. Meet up at the north gates in an hour. Ordered Kakashi, before puffing out via Shunshin. Naruto did the same, though his was with black smoke and a bit of red in it. The other two had no choice but to walk home, something that Anima wasn't happy about and a pink-haired girl had no problem with. In his home, Naruto and Akio were getting ready. He thought about Kyuubi and wondered what to do. The demoness was kinda nice. Flashback. Naruto and Akio, still in her human form, walked through the sewers that was supposed to be Naruto's mind. As they kept walking, they heard the faint sound of whimpering and something else sobbing. As they neared the end of the corridor, they could see a room almost big enough to fit the Hokage monument inside of it and an equally large gate on the other end of the room. That was where the sobbing came from. Naruto looked at Akio a bit confused, only to find she had the same expression of confusion. He walked a little closer to the gates and listened to the sad crying. Naruto looked inside to find what seemed to be a red shivering ball of fur. He slipped through the bars of the cage, Akio not far behind, to see a young woman around his age curled up in a ball with her legs hugged against her chest. She had red hair that reached her butt, it curled upwards almost like fire. She also had two red fox ears on top of her head, tipped in black, though they were currently pressed against her head, like when dogs are sad. Then he noticed the set of 9 tails attached above her butt, all of them curled up and hugging her body. The next thing was quite unexpected, she was naked and her tails were the only thing keeping her modesty. When Naruto was a few feet from her, he kneeled down and put a hand on her shoulder. As soon as he did, the red-haired girl swung around and clung to him by placing her arms around Naruto's neck. He was startled for a moment, confused on what to do, then began hugging the girl back. She kept crying for a few minutes, murmuring apologies and pressing her face to his chest. I am so sorry. I never wanted to do this, I swear. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. Whispered the crying girl. Naruto was confused. This was the Kyuubi. The mighty Kyuubi no Yaku was a girl, no big deal there, he could handle that. The Kyuubi was crying on his chest, saying she was sorry and apparently wouldn't be letting go soon. That's not something he was expecting. He looked down at her and asked, why are you crying? And why are you apologizing to me? The girl, who he was sure by now was Kyuubi, looked away, not wanting to look into his eyes. I made your life horrible. It's my fault you're hated by the whole village. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. If it weren't for me, you might still have had a family and a normal life. She once again broke into tears as she hugged Naruto tighter. She expected anything. A glare, a hit, screaming, cursing, anything from the boy whose life was miserable because of her. Instead, Naruto placed a hand under her chin and brought her face up so he could look at her. She was very beautiful, that he would agree on. She kept her eyes shut, not wanting to see his face ink as he was angry at her. Please, look at me. Naruto said in a kind and soothing voice. For a moment, she didn't, but she did when Naruto started rubbing her cheek affectionately. She slowly opened her eyes, showing her blood-red eyes with slitted pupils. Her eyes widened when she saw Naruto's kind and warming smile, his eyes blue and deep. She couldn't believe he wasn't even angry. Why don't you hate me? It's because of me that you're an orphan, Naruto-kun. She said. Naruto shook his head and said I don't blame you for that. Besides, you don't look evil to me. And I'm not sure why you attacked Konoha, but I'll let you tell me when you're ready. Kyuubi nodded, happy Naruto understood. That's when she noticed a girl with platinum blonde hair with black fox ears and tail. Akio. Hi Auntie Kyuubi. Naruto's eyes widened. Now not only did the Kyuubi turn out to be a beautiful and nice fox girl, but she was an aunt. Holy shit. Naruto thought. And just as fast as he found Kyuubi in his arms, he found her in Akio's arms, both squealing in happiness. Naruto had to hold back the nosebleed on seeing two hot girls hugging and jumping. Not to mention one of them was completely naked, and now that she wasn't crying and curled up in a ball he could see the curves and large breast, though they weren't huge, and how her tails were wagging like crazy, while the other girl still had super tight clothes. He quickly looked away and tried to think of something different. What do I think about? How about Raymond? Raymond, bowls of Raymond seemed to appear before his eyes. Unfortunately, he heard the squeals again, causing him to look back at them, then quickly look away from staring at Kyuubi's body. Somehow, an image of a naked Kyuubi with Raymond broth pouring down her appeared in his head. He could already see the broth fall from a bowl floating over her, pouring the delicious liquid over her face and neck, her erect nipples, down to her luscious womanly. Stop. Don't think about that, Naruto. It's no good, I'm turning into Kakashi-sensei. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Naruto-kun. Are you alright? Asked Kyuubi, a little worried over her container. Naruto nodded his head quickly and said, just a little hungry where are we anyway? Kyuubi shrugged, though she still looked at Naruto with some worry. I believe it's your mind. It's simply like this because you never changed it. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes while concentrating. Soon he felt a small wind blow through his hair and opened his eyes to find a giant lake in front of him. There were great forests surrounding it with a bunch red rose bushes near the pond. It was also nighttime and there was a full moon on the sky reflecting off of the surface of the lake, now to mention there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Kyuubi and Akio gasped at the beauty of the place. Naruto was pretty good with his imagination when he wanted to be, and can that be counted as a pun? Kyuubi turned to Naruto, obviously amazed. It's beautiful, Naruto-kun. Naruto scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Yeah, I guess it is. It's actually the first thing that popped into my head. Then flashback. As Naruto walked to the gates, he realized someone was following him. He looked a little to the left but found nobody behind him. He sniffed the air and smiled. Cinnamon buns. Hinata, he thought. He kept walking for a little longer until he disappeared in a black blur. Hinata looked everywhere but couldn't see him. Hi Hinata. Someone whispered behind her. She jumped and spun around to find blue eyes staring at her own lavender orbs. She realized she couldn't move her breath and apparently, so did Naruto. Hinata, breath. Please, unless you want me to. That's when he thought of it. I'll have to perform mouth to mouth. Gasp bonk. Naruto found Hinata's frail and small body in his chest in an instant. He smiled and picked her up bridal style. As soon as he had her in his arms, Hinata snuggled closer to Naruto's chest and smelled his scent. Naruto chuckled and started roof jumping to the grounds where Kurenai's team usually practiced in. As Kiba and Shino finished their spar, Naruto appeared and asked, "Where's Kurenai-sensei?" "Get away from her, Baka," shouted Kiba. He was about to punch Naruto, but Naruto dodged by leaning back and Akio shooting from his head to bite Kiba on the nose. He screamed until Akio placed her paws on his lips and closed them shut. "There is no need for you to start being loud, Kiba-san. You might wake up Hinata-chan, and I don't think Naruto-sama would want you disturbing his future mate." Akio said barked. Kiba just growled and spit Akio out of his mouth, although she gracefully landed on all fours before beginning to growl at Kiba. "Beat it. This is alpha business, pup," Kiba said in the canine language, and "I don't give a fuck if foxes and dogs understand each other or not, this is my fanfic." "Agreed, now get the fuck out of here and go find a better mate, cuz Hinata-chan will never be your mate." Akio all but howled at the boy. Kiba was red with anger and looked at Naruto before saying, "Naruto, get you bitch and get the hell away from my mate." The whole world seemed to become cold and dark in an instant as Naruto's eyes were covered by the shadows of his hair. He leaned in and whispered in Kiba's ear one word, a word that held huge amounts of fear. "Run." Before Kiba could ask what was wrong, he heard the horrible sound of a mad fox. He slowly turned around to find Akio now almost twice as tall as him. And like Naruto told him, he ran as fast as his hands and feet could take him as a giant Akio ran after him. "Kami has no wrath like an angry vixen scorned," Naruto murmured to no one in particular. Akamaru trotted up to Naruto and asked, "Will Kiba be okay?" "Hard to tell," Naruto answered. "If he runs fast enough and tires Akio down, he might just get a few deep wounds. If he doesn't run fast enough he might have a sex change." Naruto, Akamaru, and surprisingly Shino shuddered at the thought of a castrated Kiba. Naruto just realized Kurenai was in the shade of a tree watching the whole ordeal. He walked over to her and said, "Hello Kurenai-sensei. I came here to give you Hinata-chan." I kinda said the wrong thing when she wouldn't breath. This got Kurenai narrowing her eyes on Naruto, something he had seen Akio do every once in a while. He was worried and scared now. "And what exactly did you say, Naruto-san?" asked a red-eyed beauty. Naruto laughed nervously and said, "You see, I kinda startled her a little and she suddenly stopped breathing, so I said I might have to perform mouth to mouth and that's it." Kurenai didn't say anything for a second, then nodded and moved to take Hinata from Naruto. That proved to be quite difficult when Hinata wouldn't let go of Naruto's shirt. After some more pulling and Hinata whining in her sleep, the pale-eyed girl let go of Naruto's shirt and curled up to sleep in Kurenai's arms. Naruto let out a sigh before whistling for Akio, who returned after pummeling Kiba into the ground. She ran to Naruto, returning to her mini size on the way, before climbing up Naruto's leg and back up to his head. Naruto walked to the gates of Konohagakure, unaware that a cloaked figure was watching him. Now at the gates, the three genin, Akio, Kakashi and Tazuna, were ready to set out. As the gates to Konoha had disappeared over the hill, they were pretty much in silence except for Akio occasionally chasing something like a squirrel or a bunny. Sasuke was up front, Sakura was to the right of Tazuna, and Naruto was to the left while Kakashi took up the rear. After some more walking, they crossed some puddles. Suddenly, two men jumped out of the ponds, both of them in camouflage with kiri headbands, slashes going through them to show they were Nukenin. They wore a strange mask and had a gauntlet, one on the left, while the other had his on the right, connected by a chain between them. They both wrapped the chain around Kakashi and pulled, slicing Kakashi to pieces. "Kakashi-sensei!" screamed Sakura as the two men looked at the bridge builder. One of them murmured, "One down." Sasuke threw a kunai at the chain, getting it pinned to a tree. As soon as they were unable to move, Sakura took out a pair of kunai and took a defensive position between the two ninja and Tazuna to keep the bridge builder safe. Before the two Nukenin could detach the chain, they were hit by a roundhouse kick from Naruto, who appeared out of nowhere in a blur. The first one he hit was knocked unconscious since he was the one to get hit the hardest, while the second one became dazed. As Naruto started tying them up, Kakashi jumped down from a tree and walked silently to them before saying, "Good job team. You performed greatly when fighting, like a true team." "How are you still alive?" screamed Sakura surprised. Kakashi pointed at the shreds where his corpse was, where there were a bunch of pieces of logs left. Substitution, realized Sakura. Naruto stood up from finishing tying the two brothers up and giving them a glare. "Tell us why you're here, why you tried to attack the drunk over there, and you might live," he said in a cold and serious voice. The only one of the men who was conscious was about to say Naruto was bluffing, but stopped himself when Naruto leaked insane amounts of killing intent and whispered in a scary monotone, "Now. We're here for the B bridge B builder. We're supposed to kill him so he won't finish the bridge," said the one that was still conscious and scared shitless. He was pretty sure he just pissed himself and could only hope it was because he just came out from the water. Then again, he really needed to pee when he was a puddle not too long ago, and right now he didn't need to as badly. He suddenly fainted, unable to take any more of Naruto's killer intent. Naruto nodded, happy with the answer, before turning to Kakashi for orders. Kakashi just stared at him, shocked a genin could make a Chunin no C-rank Nukenin criminal spill his guts. He shook his head out of his daze before going over to Tazuna and asking, "What are you hiding? This is a normal C-rank mission, yet there are Nukenin after you. Explain." Tazuna sighed and said, alright. Have you heard of Gato?" Getting a nod from Kakashi, he has been known for normally running some boats and stuff, but in truth he sells drugs and hires men to do his dirty work. Right now he's been leeching the money from Olive Wave, and the only hope we have right now is if I finish this bridge. "Then why didn't you take another team?" asked Kakashi. "This mission is probably a B, maybe low A rank, and we were meant to finish a C rank. You could have hired someone who is stronger. Isn't it obvious?" Everyone turned to Naruto, who had his arms crossed and was looking at the tied-up Nukenin. This Gato man must have sucked Wave dry, leaving them very poor. Tazuna was only able to afford a C-rank mission and got us. "But it's okay. It's not your fault. If you go now, I will probably just die, and my little grandson will probably cry for days, while my daughter will forever hate Konohagakure. But still, it's not your fault," said Tazuna. Everyone's sweat dropped. Kakashi sighed. "Kami must hate him. Okay, just let me check with my team," he said, turning to the three genin. "What do you guys think we should do? Go back, or should we continue?" Naruto didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, let's go. But Gato's head is mine." Sasuke nodded and said, "Fine, I agree with the dope." Sakura was hesitant at first, but then nodded and said, "Fine, let's kick some butt." Kakashi nodded, satisfied with his students' decisions. He turned back to Tazuna and said, "Fine, we will go to Wave and protect you. But you will have to pay back Konoha what you owe when this is over." Tazuna nodded and thanked them before they once again started on their journey to Wave. Again, they didn't see the cloaked figure disappear in a puff of black smoke. There's a lot of fog. That's what was running through the minds of Team 7. They were now in a small boat, looking around them for anything out of the ordinary. The man controlling the boat turned off the motor and started using an oar. As they kept going, they saw the bridge Tazuna was supposed to be working on and stared at it in awe. It was very big and impressive, even when it wasn't finished. Once they reached land, they thanked the man and went on their way. Almost a week has passed since they left Konohagakure, and Akio was bored to death. Nothing had happened since that attack from those demon brothers. If those jackasses were real demons, they would be the biggest disgrace to all true demons. Meanwhile, Team 7 and Tazuna were walking through the misty area. Akio sniffed the air and frowned. The mist was strange, there was something in it that seemed controlled. She smelled again and barked at Naruto, "There's chakra in this mist." Naruto took a sniff as well. Yep, there was chakra alright. Then he heard something, and whatever it was heading towards them. Apparently, so did his sensei. "Everyone get down." Kakashi shouted, bringing Sasuke and Tazuna down. Sakura, however, froze when she saw a giant piece of metal spinning towards her. Just as it was about to slice her head off, there was a loud clang as another, much thinner blade appeared in front of her. The second blade twisted, making the larger piece of metal go flying into the trunk of a tree. Sakura blinked and realized that Naruto was beside her, his katana out and right in front of her. He smiled at her and cheerfully said, "Hi." Sakura could only blush at how Naruto was so close to her, letting his breath reach her face. It sent chills down her spine, and it sure as hell wasn't that she was scared. Everyone looked up to the piece of metal, which turned out to be a giant cleaver. In an instant there was a man standing on the sword's handle. He had blue striped pants, no shirt, and had bandages covering his mouth and forehead. Around his black head of hair was a slanted headband with a slashed Kiri symbol on it. He looked at them and leaked out a lot of kai. The bridge builder and two of the genin were paralyzed by fear, while the third one, along with his partner, leaked out a bit of his own kai, which countered that of the man's. "Ada Kakashi, or would you prefer Sharingan no Kakashi? I've heard you've copied over 1,000 jutsu using that eye of yours. I'm quite impressed by that blonde one though. The boy can actually withstand my kai and even counter it with his own. What's your name, Gaki?" said the bandaged man while jumping down and taking his sword with him. "Uzumaki Naruto, and I believe you are Mamachi's Zabuza, the demon of the bloody mist, right?" Naruto said, getting into a defensive position. The swordsman nodded and Kakashi took out a kunai. "Naruto, protect the Tazuna and leave Zabuza to me." "Hi." Naruto disappeared and now stood in front of Tazuna, Akio by his side, after growing as tall as he was. Sasuke was the next to shake out of his shock and take a defensive position next to Tazuna, Sakura not far behind. Zabuza looked at them and said, "Just look at you. Kids playing ninja. How unfortunate for you to die here and now." When he said this, Sasuke was about to charge, but Naruto said, "Sasuke, stay put. He's trying to get you angry." And is succeeding, he mentally added. Zabuza turned his attention to Kakashi and said calmly, "Listen, how about I make this simpler for you? Give me the bridge builder so I can kill him and you live. Or you can fight me, die, then I kill the bridge builder. Your choice." Naruto was the one to answer with a smile and a simple, "Thanks, but no thanks." Akio barking next to him to show her approval, though it sounded huge and scary now that she was a giant. The three genin were impressed when Kakashi and Zabuza started battling, even if they couldn't see much with the fog Zabuza summoned up using a jutsu. Kakashi was later forced to use his Sharingan he kept under the headband when things went south. This got Sasuke and Sakura shocked, and Naruto thought Kakashi was getting old if he was using the Sharingan now. Only once did Naruto have to intervene, and that was when Zabuza suddenly appeared inside the genin's defense. When he was about to cleave Tazuna in half, black spikes appeared out of the ground and impaled him in the stomach, chest, legs, and head, all appearing when Naruto ran through some hand seals and sending his fist into the ground while whispering, "Shadow style. Black spike death." The man suddenly burst into water, showing that it was actually a water clone. Akio suddenly lunged forward and chomped on something, which turned out to be Zabuza's blade. They struggled for a moment, Zabuza trying his best to keep the giant fox at bay as she tried to disarm him from his executioner's blade by pulling and jerking with her teeth and claws. With a great push, Zabuza finally got rid of the fox as it jumped back when he tried to slice her down the middle. He quickly blocked a strike from Kakashi and pushed the one-eyed Jonin into the water. Just when Kakashi was about to get up and keep fighting, he realized he was suddenly trapped inside one of Zabuza's jutsu as he was encased in a sphere of water. The downside was that Zabuza had to keep physical contact with the sphere, so Kakashi didn't get out, so Hugh made 3 water clones and sent them to kill the rest. "Run. Take Tazuna and get out of here. The water clones can't go far from the original, so they'll eventually disperse when you're far enough," Kakashi ordered. Naruto cocked his head to the side and mocked surprise. "Kakashi-sensei. I feel hurt. I think you forgot something you taught us all. Those who abandon orders are trash, but those who abandon their teammates are worse than trash." Therefore, we're not leaving you just like that. And with that, Naruto disappeared, appeared next to a tree and reached his left hand inside the shadows. He used some chakra to mold the shadows and brought his hand out. He was now holding a second katana made of shadows with wind designs on it. It looked the same as Akio's katana form, only it didn't have a fang at the butt. He then looked at Zabuza and said, "You have 5 seconds to let my sensei go, or I will harm you greatly." The way he said greatly made a chill go up everyone's spine. When Zabuza didn't respond, Naruto got into a stance with Merciless in his right arm, leaning on his neck, and the shadow katana by his right hip, and if you've seen or played Kingdom Hearts 2, think of Sora's Valor form stance. He rushed towards one of the clones and instantly cut it in half, then when the next one tried to slice him by the waist he jumped up and Akio chomped the clone's head off as it burst into water. The last one would have cut off her head had Naruto not cut his head off when he wasn't looking. Now only the original was left and he was getting a bit uncomfortable. He couldn't say worried, the brat was just a kid and jonin don't get worried by kids. Naruto took out a scroll from his pants leg and unsealed a large Fuma shuriken. He brought it back and started spinning it before throwing it towards Zabuza's arm. Zabuza had 2 choices, either leave the jutsu and let Kakashi go to fight or have his hand cut off, Kakashi out, then fight. Duh. He let go of the sphere just in time to dodge the spinning blade that was about to slice his arm off. Now freed, Kakashi resumed his fight with Zabuza with Akio and Naruto with him. Soon Naruto and Akio were back with Tazuna and his teammates as Kakashi started mimicking everything Zabuza did in perfect synchronization. Soon Zabuza was so confused Kakashi was finally able to make a hand seal before Zabuza. Water style. Great whirlpool jutsu. Shouted Kakashi as a great amount of water went rushing towards Zabuza and slammed onto his chest. The mist swordsman was sent through a dozen trees before finally stopping in one. Then Naruto stabbed his arms and legs before placing the shadow katana on Zabuza's neck. Kakashi appeared next to Naruto and also pulled out a kunai, ready to kill Zabuza. The swordsman knew he was totally screwed. His arms and legs were horribly damaged, his breathing became difficult and painful, and he felt like every bone in his body was broken. He looked up at the 2 shinobi before him and coughed up some blood through his bandages. "Can you see the future?" asked Zabuza to the white-haired shinobi. Kakashi nodded and said, "Yes, I can. And your future, Mamachi Zabuza, is death." Just as Kakashi was about to slice Zabuza's neck, 2 senbon needles pierced Zabuza's neck. The mist ninja's eyes widened before they rolled to the back of his head and his body went limp. Another ninja with a strange mask, a green battle kimono, and strange brown pants appeared next to Zabuza's body. Whoever it was hard to tell if it was male or female, since his or her hair was in a bun and 2 bangs on either side of his or her face. "Thank you, I have been after Mamachi for weeks now. You have just made my job easier," said the ninja. Naruto nodded and said, "It's a pleasure, but are you sure he's dead?" The masked ninja nodded and slung one of Zabuza's arms over his or her neck while taking the giant blade on the other. Wouldn't it be easier to just cut the head off and burn the body?" Naruto asked, genuinely confused. Before he could ask anything else, the nin was already gone, so he just shrugged it off. "Well," Kakashi said, his voice slightly slurring, "we'll have to go on now. And I think I'm falling." And true to his word, he fell forward and was about to have his head in the mud, but Naruto caught him and slung him over Akio after covering his left eye with his headband. He and Akio walked over to Tazuna, oblivious to the glare he was getting from the Uchiha. Why does the dead last have to be as powerful as he is now? He doesn't deserve any of this power, it belongs to me, an Uchiha elite. I'll find out how you got this strong sooner or later, just you wait dope. Meanwhile, Sakura was thinking something along the lines of, I can't believe Naruto-kun is this strong. Wait Naruto-kun. Why am I thinking like that? I like Sasuke-kun alright. Bah, of course we don't. Naruto-kun will protect us till the end. We have to have him soon, before anyone else can. Screamed inner Sakura inside the Pinkette's head. She shook her head, trying to shut the voice of her inner self, and asked, Tazuna-san. We might need a place to stay since Kakashi-sensei will need time to recover. Is it okay if we stay at your home? Tazuna nodded. Of course. Follow me. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a certain masked nin had some tools sprawled out in front of her. She looked at Zabuza's body and mumbled, well, better take out the senbon now. Just as she was about to take out the needles, Zabuza's hand shot up and caught the nin's wrist while he glared at her. Ah, fuck Haku. You really like putting me in that death state, don't you? Asked the once dead Miss Nin. Sorry Zabuza-sama, but it was the only way to take you out of there. Besides, it was either that or I had to cut off your head. And if you don't realize it, you need your head to live and think. Ah. Just hurry up to the base, we need to get ready as soon as possible. And take that damn mask off. It creeps me out. How much time till I get better? About a week, maybe less if I get a few herbs so you can heal faster," said the young girl as she took off the mask, showing a pale and beautiful face. She picked up Zabuza once again and went on her way to their home. After some walking, Team 7 arrived at Tazuna's house with Kakashi still very tired from chakra exhaustion. As they got closer to the door, Tazuna was greeted by his daughter Tsunami. She ran up to him and enveloped him in a tight hug that was almost enough to crush his old bones. Naruto and Sakura smiled while Sasuke just kept brooding. "Dad, I'm glad you're home." She then turns to the genin and says, "You must be the ones to protect my father. Thank you." She then bows to them and Naruto said, There's no need for you to bow, we're just here to do our job. And we might need a place to put him in." He finished by jerking a thumb at Kakashi, who was still barely able to move, much less stay awake. Tsunami guided him to a room upstairs and told Naruto Kakashi could stay there. Naruto thanked her and placed Kakashi right there in a futon so he could rest. After exiting the room, he went to another where he and his teammates would be staying in. He was thinking on how his days were going. He began to talk to Kayu-chan more. He noticed Sakura stopped calling him Naruto Baka and just called him Naruto. Though sometimes it sounded like she wanted to say something else after his name. He was close to creating his own original shadow technique and was ready to perhaps ask Hinata on a date. Not only that, but Sakura had started training seriously after some talking. Flashback. Sakura was once again stalking Uchiha Sasuke via roof jumping. She was proud of herself for not being caught by one of the members of the Uchiha clan. What she didn't know was that the Uchiha ass was always too busy brooding to even notice a fly buzzing in his hair if it ever happened. As Sasuke entered the Uchiha district, still his legally, Sakura had no choice but to stop her pursuit and go home. On her way to her house, she could have sworn she saw something in the shadows heading towards a training ground. Curiosity getting the best of her, she ran towards said training ground and watched as a shadow literally came out and walked towards the middle of the clearing. Slowly it started gaining color, its hair the last thing to change back, before there stood Naruto and Akio. Akio then jumped from Naruto's head and growled something at Naruto, who started on stretching. After doing so, the blonde then made a single cross-shaped hand sign, and in an instant, without a single puff of smoke, there appeared an army of blondes in front of the original. Sakura was amazed and wondered what Naruto was about to do. She saw him give out orders, but was still too far away to hear. When Naruto was done talking, all the clones took out the exact same katana from their backs, the kanji for merciless on both sides, and they all took up a fighting stance. Naruto also took out his own and mirrored the clones. Then it was quiet. Nobody made a sound, and the only thing Sakura could hear was her own heartbeat and her breathing. Then, as if a switch was activated, all the Naruto clones charged at Naruto. The real one started hacking and slicing all the clones that came to him from all directions and angles. Sakura was even more surprised. Even from here, she could hear the sound of metal against metal every time Naruto parried and blocked a sword aimed at him. It was a clear sign that these weren't regular clones, since normal ones were mere illusions. They had no scent, they made no sound, and they always needed a person to control them. These were attacking the original with independent thought, they made sounds, the weapons they had were real, and they also seemed to be performing some jutsu using the shadows every now and then. In about half an hour, there stood only Naruto, slightly panting and looking over what his clones just gave him. He had a good guard, but there were still a few weaknesses and some openings he had to work on. As he sat down to rest, Akio went up to him and said, "Naruto-sama, the pink-haired girl is watching us. Should I take care of her?" "No," Naruto spoke back, "leave her alone. Maybe I can make her train a little." With that thought, his body seemed to sink into a black and inky pool as he slowly melted into the shadows. Sakura was startled, not sure where he went, before she heard breathing behind her, along with what sounded like a dog panting. She slowly turned around and met cerulean blue eyes and a smile from the blonde she had just been observing. He looked at her as if joking around and asked, "Enjoying the show?" Sakura couldn't help the blush that was spreading across her face. Naruto chuckled and asked, "So how's your training been, Sakura-san? You getting any better?" Sakura opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. Mainly because there was nothing to say. She suddenly forgot why she ever even became a kunoichi in the first place. She shook her head and looked at the ground in shame. "Sorry, Naruto. I haven't really been training at all. And besides, all I do is ask Sasuke-kun for a date, but he ignores me completely." Naruto nodded and asked, "Do you still want to be a kunoichi?" Sakura nodded and said, "Yeah. I came this far, and I'm not backing out." Naruto nodded, seemingly happy with the girl's answer. He took out a small slip of paper and said, "Channel some of your chakra into this, then we can determine your chakra affinity." Doing so, the paper turned soggy and wet in an instant. She smiles, knowing what it meant. "Looks like I have water. Cool." She exclaimed happily. Naruto nodded. "Come on, let's start your training." Flashback end. Ever since then, Sakura had been working hard to become a strong kunoichi. She wasn't over her crush, but she was no longer obsessed with him either. Outside, the same cloaked figure was perched on a tree looking through a window to see the blonde boy his little sister has been speaking very highly of. A few strands of platinum blonde hair could be seen sticking out of his black hood. He chuckled lightly. I came here looking for my sister and I find her with a blonde ninja. What have you got here? Perhaps he really is a potential mate like you said, Ni-chan. His amber and slitted eyes flashed for a second before he disappeared into the darkness of the inky shadows. After some time, Kakashi walked down, though had some trouble getting downstairs, and sat down in the table. Sasuke was brooding in the living room, and Sakura was secretly reading a scroll Naruto gave her on some healing jutsu. Naruto was still in his room, reading over the jutsu from the forbidden scroll. He smirked as he read the next one he was about to learn. Fire style. Great Dragon Claw. Forms a claw of pure fire around the user's arm, adding a boost to most jutsu, and also makes the user's arm invulnerable to all fire attacks to the arm. Does not hurt the user and will work as a shield to cancel out any fire and wind jutsu. A rank ninjutsu. Interesting, Naruto thought. He didn't need duck ass to hear anything he was saying, so he tried his best to read out loud as little as possible. He suddenly smelled something and put the scroll away in a flash before exiting the room. He then walked downstairs and his nose was soon assaulted by the smell of dinner coming from Tsunami's kitchen reached his nose. He absently licked his lips and started on his way to the table for dinner. Akio was left outside since she preferred to hunt. A treat every now and then was okay, but she liked rabbits and smaller critters better. She kept running around, looking for anything at all to eat, but they were either very few of them or they were very sneaky. She kept looking around until she felt the strange feeling she was being watched. She heightened her hearing a little, but was too late to dodge the giant form that pounced on her, pinning her to the ground with only one paw. What the hell? She barked, trying to look at who or what hit her. She looked up and saw bright amber eyes just like her own with the slitted pupils. She gasped and asked, Nai-san. The figure let go of her and took a few steps back. There in front of her stood a fox almost as big as a small horse. It had pitch black fur just like her, its canines were sticking out of its jaws, and it had 5 tails behind it. Hey Akio. Haven't seen you in a while nowadays. What happened? I've heard how you've been coming back home to get some scrolls and leaving to train here. And why do most of the vixens in our clan keep talking about fish cakes? It asked her, tilting its head to the side. Do you have fish cakes? I love fish cakes. It then added as all 5 tails began wagging happily. Akio sighed. He may be older, but he still acted childish most of the time. I suppose you could say I found some. One to be exact. His name is Naruto. Akio said in a calm voice. Naruto? Sis, I know you're weird and all, but it's not right to name your food. Shishi, beast, just leave me alone. Grumbled Akio to the now named Shishi. The other black fox became covered in black flames before a shape stood upwards, showing a young man standing with a cloak on him, the hood hiding most of his face. He took it off and showed himself to be a rather attractive young man around 15, with platinum blonde hair that was almost as spiky if not spikier than Naruto's hair. In truth, he was about 1,000 years older than Akio, but hid it well. He shrugged and said, I've seen that Uzumaki kid already, and he seems okay. So I guess I won't burn him alive. However, if he does anything to you, he'll have a sex change before completely dying a slow and painful death. Understood? As soon as he finished talking, Akio was in her human form chalking him. Don't you dare do anything to Naruto-kun. I'll beat you 100 feet into the ground, rip your tails off, and then force feed them down your throat. Do you hear me? She screamed at him, her eyes flashing to show she was serious. Shishi chuckled. I thought a moment ago it was Naruto-sama, not Naruto-kun. He said in a teasing tone. Akio realized her mistake and blushed heavily. I mean Naruto-sama. I meant to say Naruto-sama, damn it. She once again shrieked at her brother, who was laughing like a maniac. Yeah, wait till I tell him about this. It'll be sweet. He said, the sweet coming out in an Eric Cartman-like voice. Akio sputtered with her words for a second before bowing her head and saying, fine, let's just go already. And with that said, the two once again became foxes and began their run back to the house of the bridge builder and his family. Izuna's house. All of Team 7 and Izuna's family were now eating dinner, nobody really talking much. That is, until a young kid came walking in with an unhappy look on his face that almost seemed permanent. He sat and ate his dinner quietly for about 4 seconds before slamming his fork on the table and shouting at the Leaf Shinobi. Why do you try so hard? You're all going to die anyway, so why bother? I dunno. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the whole place is being placed under his control and I don't like it one bit. What other reason do we need? Asked Naruto in a matter-of-fact way. He didn't know why this kid was angry since they were about to help out. Tsunami glared at the boy. Inari, show some respect. These are the ninja that are going to help us get out of Gato's grasp and save this village. Inari still seemed unhappy and continued to glare at the shinobi. Sakura looked confused, Naruto was frowning in confusion as well, Sasuke was glaring at the kid, and Kakashi didn't seem to notice. You can't beat Gato. He's too strong. You might as well leave and go back to your cozy homes while we take care of our business, said Inari. Naruto was the next one to glare at the young boy. Kid, don't think for a second our lives are cozy. Especially my life. You had a family, someone who loves you, someone who protects you. I had no one. You weren't scolded for being alive. I was. You didn't have the woman in the orphanage try to poison your food and have you killed multiple times. I was. The entire village didn't chase you and try to kill you in your birthdays. My village did. He suddenly stopped, took a shaky breath, then stood up and headed to the door. He looked back and said, I'm off to train. Don't look for me. Kakashi nodded. Fine, but be careful Naruto. And with that said, he slammed the door closed and walked out, ignoring Akio who was about 3 feet to his left. He didn't even notice the bigger fox next to her. So that's your fish cakes, eh? He seems pissed. By the time Shishi was done talking, Akio was already after her master. Oi. Wait for me. And he ran after his sister before she could get out of sight. Back inside, Naruto had left a shocked bundle of people. Tsunami was the first to recover. Kakashi-san. What Naruto-san said, is it true? Kakashi sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Actually, he gave you the sweet version. He left out a few things. The only good thing is that there are few that stay neutral towards him and even fewer that actually care for him. He said, his voice serious and sad. He had complained being an Anbu captain was troublesome if he had to keep chasing a lousy blonde brat. But as soon as he did, everything went south. Not only did Itachi become a nuke nin, but he no longer could protect Naruto as he would always. As a result, Naruto was almost completely alone most of the time. Then again, Naruto became strong from being alone with the black fox, Akio. He would have to ask Naruto about that later. After all, no fox was like that Akio one. Sasuke in the meantime didn't really believe anything the blonde boy said. He probably just made it up to impress everyone here. PFFT, as if someone can endure that much pain. He's hated, but only because he's a nobody, he thought, like the arrogant jackass he is. Sakura on the other hand was shocked. Normally, if she were still some fangirl, she would have claimed Naruto was lying. However, she clearly saw the pain in Naruto's eyes. She realized that in her own way, she also inflicted some pain on Naruto. Maybe not to the same degree as the villagers, but she still denied to give him friendship when he asked for it, even when he needed it the most. Her face took one of sadness as she felt horrible. Kakashi saw her down look and was in a way glad Sakura was paying attention to Naruto instead of ignoring him like she used to. He really needed to thank Naruto for that. He looked at Sasuke, whose face hadn't changed. Not something he wanted to see. The rest that were in the table were still shocked to find an entire village would do such things to a mere child. Inari left the table with tears in his eyes, saying he would be in his room. Zabuza's hut. Zabuza was in his bed, under some covers, healing, and listening to a midget yell. I can't believe this. Shouted the short man, you're supposed to be the demon of the mist, yet a Jonin and a bunch of brats were able to take you on. Why am I even bothering to pay you? While the midget ranted, Zabuza rolled his eyes and sighed. Once he finally got paid, he could go back to his village and kill the damn Mizukage. Shut your trap already. I'll get them next time I see them. Growled Zabuza, though it seemed to annoy Gato. You better. Or I won't pay you at all. Gato was about to reach for Zabuza's bandages to teach him a lesson, but was stopped when Haku snapped his wrist. The midget screamed in pain and backed away. His 2 bodyguards were about to slice Haku into pieces, but found their own blades pressed against their necks. That your sorry excuses for hands off of Zabuza-sama, or I will personally castrate you. Haku said in the most menacing voice she could muster. Let's go. We're done here. Ordered Gato, leaving with his goons and sending a glare to both Zabuza and Haku. When the midget was gone, Zabuza turned to Haku as best as he could in his bed and said, that was unnecessary, Haku. I could have taken care of him myself. He moved slightly below the covers and showed he had a kunai in hand. I know Zabuza-sama, but you need to heal or you will only make the wounds worse. Standing up, she changed into a pink kimono and took off all her ninja gear. She said she needed some herbs and left. Forest. Naruto was unhappy. Mostly with himself for saying those things to the kid. He didn't know why he got angry, but he just really wanted to scream that Konoha wasn't cozy to him. He actually wanted people to know what Konoha did to cursed children instead of helping them. Maybe he was actually losing it. Again, another tree fell because of the slash that went right through it. He didn't even notice the fact that he was pushing chakra into the blade, nor that no normal blade should be able to do that. All he knew was that he was angry and that he was simply cutting to vent out his anger. Left and right, almost every tree he passed was cut down. Akio and Shishi were watching the blonde from behind a bush. Akio was very worried for her master. She never knew Naruto had this much anger in him. Finally, after many hours, it was getting close to dawn and Naruto collapsed on the forest floor from minor chakra exhaustion. Akio slowly walked over to him and curled up into a ball on Naruto's chest before falling asleep. Not long after, 3 minutes actually, a young girl a little older than Naruto wearing a pink kimono came into a clearing. She was going about, bending down occasionally to pick up an herb, when she noticed that there was a boy a few feet to her left, resting near a place that had the trees cut right through. He looked exhausted, but recuperating slowly. She walked over to him and saw the black piece of cloth on his stomach shift slightly. Then she realized it was actually a fox with black fur. She remembered seeing a giant fox at the battle that Zabuza fought, but this one could probably be held in both her hands. She knew who this was, the one who stabbed Zabuza and was about to kill him. She probably should have brought some weapons, and there wasn't enough water anywhere to use her ice powers. Crap. Maybe I could strangle him. No, the fox will most likely wake up when he starts struggling. Why did I leave my weapons? I could have at least brought a senbon or two, she mentally whined. She got closer and took a closer look at his face. Last time she saw him, she was sure he had blue eyes. She kept staring at his whisker marks and his blonde spiky hair. Before she could even realize it, she was already about an inch away from his face. She blinked twice before slowly sitting straight again, a blush on her face noticeable. She looked over at the fox again to find it was awake, making her panic. It looked at her from on top of the blonde stomach, she looked back at the little critter. It cocked its head to the side, so did she, but to the other side. Then the fox turned into a weird black substance and turned into a naked platinum-haired girl straddling the blonde boy's waist in a fox hybrid form with a black tail and fox ears. Haku looked at her for about 4 seconds before she fainted. Akio giggled when she saw the girl on her back with a trail of blood coming out of her nose. After a few more minutes, the ice user woke up. Just in time too, Naruto was waking up as well. The young blonde got up and looked around him for a moment before noticing the young girl who was turned away from him. She seemed to be wiping something off her face furiously while making sure he didn't see her. He quirked an eyebrow and looked down at his lap to see Akio, who was currently in her fox form. She looked at him with those puppy dog eyes that said, "I did something that will make you angry, so I'll just be cute and adorable." Again, he looked at the girl with black hair and the pink kimono. She was quite beautiful, he'd give her that, and had chocolate brown eyes that almost looked like his own. The girl was thinking along the same lines as him in the eye department. They seemed to belong to someone like her, someone filled with sadness and loneliness. Naruto smiled at her, making her blush a little. "Hi there. What are you doing here?" Haku quickly looked around and said, "I'm picking herbs for someone special to me." She bent down to pick up an herb from the ground. "Lady, that plant you're holding is poisonous." Naruto deadpanned. She looked at the plant and realized he was right. She blushed in embarrassment and let the plant drop, Naruto looking at her like she did something stupid. Well, she almost did something stupid. She cleared her throat and turned her attention back to Naruto. "So you're a ninja. It must be hard life. You shouldn't be sleeping here, you could catch a cold." Not like it's the first time I've slept outdoors. And besides, I haven't caught a cold in all my life." Naruto said smoothly, remembering many times he had to sleep in the streets. Akio wrapped herself around his neck like a scarf and looked at Haku with some curiosity. The little demoness was sure she'd seen the young girl before but couldn't remember. "What is your name?" asked the girl. "My name is Haku." "I'm Naruto." "So, who are the herbs for?" "Someone precious to me." "Were you training here?" "It looks like it because of the damage," she asked curiously. Naruto looked over to where she was looking and realized how much damage he caused. His eyes widened and he feels a slight pain on his back. He looks over and finds Merciless's guard poking his back. He pulls the blade out, careful not to cut himself with the blade. He replaced it in its scabbard and then stood up, stretching his arms to the sky. Haku had to hold back her blush as she could see his abs and arms perfectly. She frowned when she noticed he looked slightly malnourished for some reason. Naruto turned to her and asked, "Do you need any help with the herbs, Haku-san?" She nodded and they spent most of the morning picking plants and talking about their precious people. After that, they were saying their goodbyes as Naruto waved at her, smiling widely. As Haku walked away, her face took on a look of sorrow. "Naruto-kun. I can only hope I don't have to fight you at the bridge. And if I do, I hope I can take you out quickly. I'm so sorry," she thought sadly as she walked back and disappearing via water shunshin. Naruto sighed and mumbled, "Better get back before they get worried." He started walking normally, but stopped after taking 20 steps when he realized something. If Akio was around his neck, why were there footsteps of a large fox following him? And that wasn't Akio's scent now that he thought about it. He turned his head slowly and was face to mouth, which is drooling. And saying, "Hi fish cakes," Naruto jumped back and got into a fighting stance with Merciless in his hands. Before he could attack, the fox got on its hind legs and brought its front legs in a placating manner. Whoa. Heal, fish cakes, heal. Down boy, don't want to hurt your mate's brother do you? It said in a cheerful tone, and Naruto realized this one had 5 tails. But he suddenly turned into black flames before forming a human-like shape and turning into a cloaked boy a little older than Naruto, with a few platinum blonde bangs sticking out from his hood. He also had a giant grin as he said, "So how you've been fish cakes? You treating my sister good? Or do I have to kill you if you aren't?" Naruto could tell this guy was serious. After all, who would have their fist have spikes all over it the size of his arm? They were at the tip of his knuckles, and the ones around his wrists were on like a bracelet, then curved to point in the same direction as his knuckles. And to add to the coolness, the spikes started spinning, the ones on the knuckles spinning clockwise, and the ones on the wrist were going counterclockwise. It made no sound, but it still looked intimidating. Naruto cocked his head to the side and asked, "Sister?" The boy pointed at Naruto's neck, where Akio was smiling with her puppy dog eyes. Naruto-sama. Meet my older brother, Shishi." Shishi raised an eyebrow at what he just heard, while Akio looked sad and hugged Naruto, now that she was in her human form. To make her feel a little better, Naruto started stroking her tail, earning purrs from the vixen sitting on his lap. Shishi was surprised humans were like that. He never knew humans would do such things to another human, a younger one at that. And Naruto was a fucking kid the first time they attacked him as a 2-year-old, running a sword through a lung. A lung, goddammit. He was starting to desire the destruction of Konohagakure, but Naruto said he was being hated less and less at a slow pace. Shishi looked up at the sky for a moment, thinking of how to put it, then deciding to be blunt about it, and returned his attention to Naruto and asked, "Is it okay if I stay with you guys? It's getting bored in the demon world. And if you show that you can be trusted, I'll give you a little present, fish cakes." Naruto quirked an eyebrow at this. He was a bit excited that a demon would give him a present, but he was still a bit cautious about the young demon before him. According to Shishi, the demons could look as old as they wanted to, so long as they were able to keep moving. No use having a demon who looked like an old man and couldn't walk, right? Naruto put a hand on his chin and thought for a moment. Akio seemed to be whimpering, and she was using her puppy eyes to make him say yes. He looked at her for 3 seconds before turning to Shishi and quickly saying, "Yes." Shishi sighed. "You can't resist it either, can you?" Naruto shook his head sadly while Shishi placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "If you find a way to resist it, you are more worthy than me, my friend." With that, he turned into a fox with just one tail and walked next to Naruto, who had Akio in her fox form around his neck like a scarf. Izuna's house. As Naruto got close to Izuna's house, he wondered what happened to the Haku girl. He knew there was something familiar about her, mainly her voice. He was sure he heard it somewhere, but couldn't place a finger on it. He shrugged and entered the house to find that Sakura and Tsunami were the only ones there. Sakura was reading her healing scroll peacefully, while Tsunami was cleaning up the kitchen. "Where's Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked the pink-haired girl. She looked up from her scroll and said, "They went to the bridge to protect Izuna while I stayed here learning this new jutsu. I already have 3 of the 7 you gave me done, so there's not much left." Naruto nodded, happy that she was progressing in her training. He found an old healing jutsu scroll one night and rewrote everything onto a new blank scroll before giving it to Sakura for her to learn. Sakura suddenly saw movement to Naruto's left and looked next to his leg to find a large fox standing there, its tail wagging. It was pitch black, just like Akio, and surprisingly also had Akio's amber yellow eyes, tough it was big enough to reach Naruto's waist. She didn't know why, but she had a strange feeling that the fox's eyes were checking her out. It sent a chill up her spine, but it wasn't really of disgust. Before she could say anything else, Naruto noticed she was staring at his new companion. "Oh, and this is Shishi. He's Akio's older brother, so don't worry about him hurting you. He's actually a lot more playful than Akio, and I think he likes you," said Naruto. He was right, Shishi liked Sakura. She looked cute, she seemed strong, and she smelled nice as well, like berries in forest. I smiled and barked at her, making her blush. She didn't know why, she just did. She looked back at Naruto and said, "Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke should be returning soon, so don't worry." "But I wasn't." Naruto mumbled under his breath. Seriously, he could care less about the Uchiha. But as long as the idiot didn't bother him, he's okay with him being out of the house for as long as possible. And Kakashi, well, he was slightly worried about him, but not so much. After all, the man was a jonin, so he could take care of himself. And again, it only took time before he himself snapped because of the annoying Uchiha. And when that happened, Naruto hoped he would be there to have a piece in beating the crap of that brat. He shook his head and said, "Anyway, keep up the good work, Sakura. Hope you'll be strong enough for what's coming up. I don't want to have to keep saving you, no matter how much fun it is." He smiled at her, making a smile of her own appear. She was always happy when Naruto was around. Being an only child, she didn't know what it was like to have any younger or older brothers sisters. Naruto was the closest she ever got to a brother, and she was glad she was lucky enough to have him on her team. She almost had the urge to call him Nai-san every now and then, and if you still don't like Sakura, well, too fucking bad for you. Most of you didn't want her to be in Naruto's harem, so she'll be his surrogate little sister. No said. Naruto sighed and began walking to the kitchen to see if he could help out in anything. On his way, he saw Inari at the dock next to his house through a window, looking at the sea quietly. Naruto felt bad for snapping at the little guy, so he walked outside and sat next to him. "Hey Inari. How have you been?" he asked, trying to be polite. The boy didn't say anything for a minute, then mumbled, "I'm sorry, Naruto-san. I shouldn't have said those things, and I'm sorry if I made you remember something you'd rather not have." Naruto smiled and ruffled Inari's head through his hat. "Don't worry about it, Inari. I guess losing a father and lacking one are different but are also equally painful. So tell me what happened exactly." Inari looked at him for a moment, not sure if he should tell the blonde or not, but then decided Naruto deserved to know. He told him everything, from how his father taught him many things, and Kaiser really is Inari's father in this story. How they would sometimes fish, and how his father wanted to protect the small town with his own bare hands. He did, but at a horrible cost. When Gato found out, Kaiser was killed in front of the whole town for his actions. At this point, Inari started crying, and Naruto placed an arm around the young boy as he sobbed into Naruto's side. Akio and Shishi were watching from the house, both happy to have Naruto as a friend. Once Inari recomposed himself, he finished that he no longer believed in heroes after his father's death. Naruto made a silent vow to kill Gato, and soon. After that, Naruto began telling him about his own life, seeing as Inari opened up to him. He tried to keep it all to a minimum, since he didn't want to tell Inari too much of the horrible things. Still, Inari remembered from the previous day what the village tried doing to Naruto. After a while, they started to just talk about the things they did. The pranks Naruto did, the times Inari and his mom would have fun every now and then. Pretty soon, they were laughing and the sun was up, meaning it was around noon. "Time for dinner." Tsunami called out to the two boys. In unison, two voices shouted, "Hi." Before the two boys were in the kitchen in a blur, Inari wearing a smile for once at the table. Naruto's smile faltered slightly when he saw the Uchiha glaring at the wall. Seriously, he glares at everything now. Akio and Shishi began hunting when they heard it was dinner time, so they left the house in a hurry to hopefully find a small critter or something. A few days later. Each day, the genin and the one jonin would take turns guarding Tazuna. Naruto and Sakura would guard him one day, and Sasuke and Kakashi would watch him the next. It was about 6 days since the encounter with Zabuza, and they were ready to fight. At night, dinner was relatively peaceful, with Kakashi getting either raised eyebrows or glares for reading his little orange book. The raised eyebrows from Tazuna and Naruto, while the glares came from Tsunami and Sakura. After a while, there was a knock at the door. "I wonder who would it be?" thought Tsunami as she got up to get it. Just as it opened slightly, Naruto heard the sound of a sword exiting its scabbard. With a single hand sign, he instantly made a substitution with himself and Tsunami, just as a sword went right through the door and into the blonde's stomach. Kakashi, at first surprised when Naruto was replaced by Tsunami, got into action when he heard the familiar sound of a blade cutting into flesh. Naruto hit the ground, clutching his stomach as blood pooled out of the wound, and the man behind the door grinned as he pulled the sword out of the door and cleaned it before putting it back in its sheath. He was in panic when he found a man with white hair and almost all his face hidden by his headband and mask behind the door, next to the blonde one he just stabbed. Kakashi's eye widened in anger as he took out a kunai to attack. The man, scared when he realized he was looking at the legendary Kakashi no Sharingan, turned around and ran into the night. Kakashi tightened his grip on his kunai and pursued the attacker. Sakura ran to Naruto's side and began to heal him with what little she knew of medical jutsu. Akio was next to him as well, opposite of Sakura, and placed her paws next to Naruto's wound, sending her Yaki into Naruto without hurting him. Sakura was surprised when Naruto's wound was healing, though it was very slow and he was still in pain and barely alive. His eyes were shut tight in pain and he was gritting his teeth. Sakura expected a scream or something, but she was impressed Naruto made no noise, just breathed more ragged. She remembered what he said the village did to him, about how he was beaten a lot as a child. She had a sad look on her face as she tried her best to heal the blonde boy. Meanwhile, Sasuke went to follow Kakashi, and Shishi was a blur as he was already out the door, following the bandit who attacked someone he instantly considered a friend. The bandit was scared shitless. He knew he didn't stand a chance against the legendary Kakashi no Sharingan. As said, Scarecrow ran after the bandit, who was almost within his grasp. A black fox the size of a horse jumped over his head and pounced on the man. Sasuke appeared next to him, just in time to see the man be bitten and clawed by the giant fox on him. What was the most frightening part of all was that the fox had 5 tails, all having their hair standing on end, looking very feral. The man didn't even scream as he was killed in a matter of seconds by the fox, once his throat was sliced. Sasuke hadn't seen anything as bloody and merciless since the day his clan was slaughtered, and it brought unwanted memories back. Now, one of Naruto's pets was destroying a man without even stopping. To make it worse, the giant fox began to eat the corpse of the dead man. Shishi, on the other hand, was happy. He was slightly worried about Naruto, but knew with 2 demons, one in his gut and another near him all the time, he would be okay. After all, Akio's healing skills were on par with the Kyuubi's, so no worries for now. And he got a meal, what better luck? He returned to eating his meal, but realized he was being watched. He turned his head slightly to the left and saw the Uchiha boy with a sick look on his face and the Scarecrow looking quite shocked. He grinned as the Uchiha fainted and the Scarecrow just kept looking at him with his widened eye. Until he talked, scaring the crap out of Kakashi. You know, it's not nice to stare at someone when they're eating, Ninjin. Now let me eat in peace. Said Shishi to Kakashi in a demonic tone. Kakashi did just that and fainted next to Sasuke. Shishi shook his head and finished up his food and walked to the 2 bodies on the ground. He picked both with one of his tails and began his walk back to the bridge builder's house. Both Sakura and Akio let out a sigh of relief when Naruto was all patched up with bandages on his torso. He was okay, but even with healing slowly would need to rest up a bit. He was barely able to stay awake, and the last thing he saw before blacking out was Shishi in a giant form, Kakashi and Sasuke being carried by his tails. As Naruto lost consciousness, Sakura almost screamed when she saw Naruto's second fox squeeze in through the door. Her mouth hung open, as did everyone else in the room. Shishi placed both Kakashi and the brat on separate couches and barked at them before returning to his regular size. They were still shocked, but were taken out of their freezing state when Naruto groaned. They turned back to the blonde to see him still there, though he was still in pain. Walking over, Shishi used his tail and carefully wrapped it around Naruto before picking him up and slowly lifting him up and placing him on his back. Now secure in Shishi's back, Naruto was taken up the stairs to where he would be staying for the night. Once settled in, Shishi left and went back downstairs. He walked over to Akio and asked, "Will he be okay, Ni-san?" Akio sighed and said, "Yes, but it'll take some time for his wound to completely heal. Even Kyuubi-sama's chakra isn't fast enough, and if it weren't for the fact that me, Kyuubi-sama and the Haruno girl were there to help him, he could have died." Shishi let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. If Naruto died, he and Akio would be forced to return to the demon world and not have any fun. No adventure, no fighting, no eating like crazy, nothing. And if he had to, he'd go straight up to the Shinigami, thrust his fist into said god's stomach, and take out Naruto and Kyuubi's soul, just to have someone to befriend. Somewhere under the crust of the earth. The creature was about to chomp down on another one of his souls before it suddenly sneezed, getting snot all over the soul of the scared assassin who killed many families. Damn mortals complaining about death. It grumbled before continuing on with his lunch. After a few minutes, Kakashi returned to the real world. When he woke up, he found 2 large amber eyes looking at him with mirth before his whole face was licked by a large wet tongue. He quickly pushed the giant fox of his face and backed away from it like a little girl who saw a monster. Kakashi noticed he was the only one in the living room since Shishi took Sasuke up to the room they would be sharing with his team, leaving Kakashi all alone kinda. When Kakashi looked scared, Shishi chuckled and whispered, "Don't worry Ninjin, I won't kill you. However, it will be better to talk about this in a much more private place." Shishi wrapped a tail around Kakashi before they both disappeared in a blaze of black flames. Akio looked on from where she was resting and sighed. "Brother, I can only hope you won't break the poor man. I don't wish to tell Naruto-sama why his sensei has lost his mind," she thought, before silently returning to sleep. But Kakashi and Shishi. Kakashi and Shishi appeared outside the house. Kakashi was still on his butt looking at Shishi in fear. Then Shishi exploded in black fire that almost made Kakashi faint again. Suddenly there was smoke where Shishi the fox once stood and a large figure of a man was there, stalking towards him. It reared its head back, as if about to attack. "I it's you." The creature sneezed. In Shishi's place was a boy around 17 with platinum blonde hair like Ino's, and he was wearing a large black cloak. Those were the minor features. What really caught Kakashi's attention were the eyes that stayed the same, the ears on his head, and the 5 tails poking out from the bottom of his cloak. He made a peace sign with his middle and index fingers, smiled and said, "Yo." As they sat across from each other on the ground in front of the house, Kakashi nodded, still digesting everything the demon just told him. It made sense now. Naruto's control over the shadows, the way he was actually able to outrun every single Anbu in the village and barely even be out of breath. And when he was listening to how Akio met Naruto, he thought it amusing Naruto could talk to foxes and dogs. Only the Inuzuka were known to do that and he was sure he had seen something like it somewhere. When he was still a teenager. He shook his head, filing that thought for a later time. He turned to the funny demon, who began cleaning his canines with his claw on his index finger and asked, "So you're not going to kill us, nor try to free the Kyuubi, correct?" Shishi nodded, then said, "Yes, but if the Uchiha finds out about this and asks to have our power, he will suffer. I don't care if you're his brother, his uncle, his brother's roommate, his sister's husband, his father's cousin's boyfriend, or even if you're just his friend. He'll be in for a world of massive pain. It's just that I hate the Uchiha clan and their motherfucking eye. I hate that eye with every fiber of my being. They go all around, thinking they're all high and mighty, just because they have their stupid Sharingan. Stupid damn teams." He mumbled the last part with his eyes closed. Kakashi once again shook his head and asked, "How do I know you're no making all this up?" Shishi looked at him slightly annoyed and said, "Don't worry, the only reason I would kill you is if you did something horrible to Naruto and Akio. Now, don't tell the Uchiha about this, and you won't bleed. Not only that, you can tell your Hokage this and that's it. And also, I'm telling you this so that you can watch the bratty pussy boy you labeled an apprentice. If he sees my sister in the wrong way, he'll die. Even Akio gets antsy if she's in her fox form for too long, and she might cuddle with Naruto a lot in her human form, making the Uchiha most likely get the hots for her. Now keep that Uchiha away from Naruto, and maybe he won't demand for power from the blonde idiot." Shishi was glaring daggers at the poor Cyclops, who was cowering in the fetal position, sitting in front of him with a cloud over his head. Kakashi nodded quickly, afraid for his life. "Kami, all demons are as scary as a rampaging Kunoichi, and I should know thanks to Rin," Kakashi thought, as Shishi pulled what seemed to be a piece of paper out of his cloak. He slapped it on Kakashi's forehead, and almost immediately, it disappeared and Kakashi no longer felt tired. He felt a lot more awake than ever, and even his eye widened more than its usual lazy self. He was pretty sure this was how the Hyper Naruto once was. "This might help, since we were talking most of the night and it's almost dawn," Shishi said, as he looked up at the sky. True enough, the sky was a deep purple with a few streaks of sunshine peeking over the horizon. "At the end of this day, be sure to make up for the sleep you skipped. This will only work until you go to sleep, and you'll be sleeping for a lot more than usual. Now remember Haddock, one word of this to the Uchiha and you both suffer more than you can imagine. Be happy Kyuubi-sama isn't able to hurt you, or she'd most likely leave you crippled." Kakashi nodded quickly, then what Shishi just said sunk in. Shishi-san. Did you just say she? As in, the Kyuubi is a G-girl?" asked the confused Jonin. Shishi blinked a few times before sighing. "Damn sexist humans. We'll talk about that later, now. We have something better to talk about." Shishi got a grin similar to Naruto's and asked, "What do you know about that Sakura girl?" It was almost noon when Naruto woke up in his futon in the corner of the room. He blinked at the sun coming in through the window and hitting his face. He groaned, ready to turn away from the light and continue sleeping, when the sound of a door crashing and a woman's scream reached him. This also awoke Akio, who was sleeping right next to his head, as they had been attacked many times and were awake in a second. He quickly looked to his side and found Merciless there and grabbed it before sprinting downstairs. Just as he got downstairs, he found Tsunami tied by her wrists being dragged out of the house by two thugs. Inari was across the room and shouted, "Let go of my mom," before charging at them. One of the thugs looked annoyed and was about to slice Inari's head off when a blade was placed right under his neck. He looked to see a blonde teenager holding a katana up to his neck and adding pressure, some blood coming down from the small cut under his head. "I suggest you leave her alone, unless you wish to die," came a cold voice you wouldn't expect from a boy his age. The thug didn't buy it and was about to slice Naruto instead, but two thuds made them look down at the blades that were once on their swords. All they were holding were the hilts, and Naruto's blade seemed to be glowing a light blue. The one holding on to Tsunami grabbed for a knife in his pocket, but soon found that he had a black spike going through his lower left ribs and coming out of his right shoulder in a diagonal way. When the spike retreated from the thug, his body slumped and the spike returned to being Akio. The thug in front of Naruto thought this to be a good time to leave, but was stopped as he turned around and was met with Inari's bow and arrow. He suddenly felt a sharp pain on the back of his neck, then everything went black. Naruto looked down at the thug and began to tie him with some ninja wire, and, "Is that what it's called?" Then looked at Inari with a form of pride. "Not bad, squirt. You rushed in to save your mother, even willing to give your own life." That's what a true hero would do. Though next time, make sure you're armed and not fight with just your fists. Which reminds me. Naruto rummaged through his pockets for a while, then took out a scroll and unrolled it. In a puff of smoke, he had a knife that was around 1.5 feet long. The handle was a black leather with the blade being around 1 foot. It had red markings that vaguely resembled fox scratches all along the blade, and the butt of it was a fox's head. Its sheath was next to it, a brown leather with a yellow sash around it. He tied it around Inari and said, only if necessary, use this to protect those you care for. It's a lot stronger when the sun is hidden, so use it wisely, got it? Inari nodded, happy with the gift, and strapped it to his weights, so it hung by his left hip. Naruto nodded, then returned upstairs to get the rest of his things. When back downstairs, he quickly went over to Tsunami and asked, where are the rest? She turned to him and said, they went with my father to the bridge. Naruto nodded and ran outside, where he noticed that Shishi was growling at a few more mercenaries coming out of the woods, his 5 tails exposed. The black fox sensed Naruto's presence and barked out, go. I'll take care of Tazuna's family. Naruto and Akio nodded and they were off in a swirl of black smoke. Kakashi was surprised and thrilled with the power surging through him. He felt like a little boy on sugar high, almost every movement of his was a blur. Zabuza was equally surprised since he had to make sure he wasn't stabbed by the strangely hyper Kakashi. Sakura was in front of Tazuna with a kunai in each hand in reverse grip and had her chakra ready for a water jutsu if necessary. Sasuke in the meantime was fighting against the ice user and was faring well, barely okay, he was getting his ass handed. He had needles coming out of most of his body, making him look like a giant standing porcupine. He gritted his teeth and glared at the mirror in front of him, which was reflecting the Hunter Nin's reflection instead of his own. Even with his Sharingan awake, he still couldn't track and attack the ice person through the dome of ice. Haku sighed, quite unsure what to do now. She didn't want to hurt the guy, but knew he was the type of pricky one. She sighed, slightly relieved. At least Naruto wasn't there. And as if to mock her, just as she was about to throw another barrage of senbon, a wall of shadows appeared to cover up the Uchiha. She looked from one of her mirrors to her left to see Naruto there, his hand inside a shadow that extended to the one in front of the Uchiha. Her eyes widened slightly. Naruto-kun. Naruto sighed and said, as much as I hate the Uchiha brat, I can't let you kill him. Shut up, dope. Hissed, said Uchiha brat. I don't need you here. I can take care of myself. And if you really were going to help me, why didn't you just attack while he didn't notice you? He scolded Naruto. Naruto looked at Haku and shrugged before entering the dome lazily and mumbled, cause I have a better defense than you and might be able to pull something off. Now, get ready to use that eye of yours for something useful and keep your mouth shut. Sasuke begrudgingly did so, but not before mumbling, dope. At the blonde boy. Naruto just sighed and began to spike his chakra, ready for anything. Akio was still outside the dome, looking for anything that might help Naruto. So far, Naruto had one advantage. The senbon couldn't penetrate his shadow shields, meaning he was pretty darn safe from the senbon. Now Sasuke, although he disliked him, he was one of the few that understood how lonely it is to have no one. He sighed and returned his attention back to the ice user, who immediately threw a barrage of senbon at the two, hoping to at least place them in a death-like state for a little while. Again, with Naruto placing shields of shadows up, the clang of the shield that was harder than metal. Unfortunately, Naruto was getting tired. The shield may be strong, but he was tiring, and Sasuke was already down on his knees. Suddenly, another barrage to senbon were heading their way, this time too fast. Naruto was barely able to place up a shadow wall before one senbon was able to lodge into Sasuke's neck. Naruto's eyes widened as Sasuke's body fell head first. Or at least, that's what it looked like before. In a puff of smoke, Sasuke disappeared and in his place was Akio. As Shishi slashed the head off of another bandit, he suddenly felt weird. It was like someone just sent a cube of ice crawl up his spine, then stay in his stomach. Akio? He thought, wondering why he felt this way. He shook it off and tried to get back to sensing if there were any more enemies. Naruto watched in horror as Sasuke suddenly appeared where Akio once was, right outside the ice dome. Haku herself couldn't believe what this Konoha ninja just did. She remembered the small pup on Naruto's chest and made more senbon ready to kill Sasuke for what he just did to save his own hide. But before she could even throw them, a huge mass of kai was felt throughout the whole bridge. It was enough for both Zabuza and Kakashi to witness their own deaths, and it wasn't even aimed at them. Naruto's body exploded in red chakra, all of it showing a furious fox face above him. His eyes became red and with a slitted pupil, his fangs and nails grew to become canines and claws, and his whiskers became darker and more defined. In a blink of an eye he socked Sasuke right across the face, breaking the Uchiha's jaw and sending him a good 20 feet. He then turned to Akio to see that she was barely breathing with the senbon being so close to her heart. Naruto's attention was turned to Haku in an instant. His anger wasn't gone, and so far Haku was the only one close for attacking. Haku wasn't prepared for the hit that came towards her and barely made it out of the mirror as it was shattered by Naruto's punch. She entered another mirror and threw more ice enban at the blonde in hopes of at least immobilizing him, only to have the foul red chakra blast them away and melt them. She quickly exited the mirror and aimed to enter another one, but her left ankle was caught by Naruto's hand, who flung her face first into the ground. His hand still around her ankle, he pulled her until she was right below him and turned her around. He lifted his fist, ready to pound the ice nin's face into the ground, but stopped when he saw the last of the cracked mask fall off of her face. He gasped as he looked at her somewhat dead eyes, just staring back at him. He calmed down somewhat and the red chakra receded. It's you. Haku-chan. Naruto whispered. What if powerful Naruto harem Sasuke and Sakura bashing, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.